I lost my entire apartment in one night, and my parents answered my sobbing call by coldly saying it was not their problem. A week later, my insurance company showed me a form I never signed listing my parents as the 100% beneficiaries. Then the fire investigator asked who had access to my unit, and my stomach turned to ice. The truth was not just ugly, it was criminal. My name is Daisy Martin, and until 4 hours ago, I thought my biggest problem was the past due notice on my electric bill. I was asleep when the world ended. It did not happen with a bang or a scream, but with a smell. It was a sharp, chemical sting that invaded my nose and dragged me out of a deep dream about drowning. I coughed, my throat instantly coating with something that tasted like burnt rubber and gasoline. I sat up in bed, blinking into a darkness that was not empty. The air was thick, gray, and swirling. It was heavy, heavier than any smoke from burnt toast or a stray candle. This was the kind of smoke that felt solid, like it was trying to push me back down against the mattress. I scrambled for the lamp on my nightstand, my fingers fumbling over the switch, but when I clicked it, nothing happened. The power was already dead. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in my chest. I rolled off the bed, my bare feet hitting the hardwood floor. It was hot, not warm, but hot, radiating a dull, vibrating heat from the apartment below or perhaps the hallway outside. I did not stop to put on shoes. I did not stop to grab the photo album of my grandmother on the bookshelf. I did not grab my laptop or my wallet. My hand shot out in the dark and closed around the cool metal of my phone on the charger. That was the only thing I took. I yanked the bedroom door open and was immediately walled by a wave of black smoke so dense it felt like a physical blow. The hallway lights were out, but I could see the orange glow dancing hungrily under the crack of the main door. The roar was audible now, a low, train-like rumble of fire eating through structure, snapping wood and melting plastic. I covered my nose with the crook of my elbow, my eyes streaming tears as the acrid bite of the smoke blinded me. I made it to the front door, my hand hovering over the knob. I remembered the safety drills from elementary school. Touch it with the back of your hand. I did. It seared my skin. The hallway was gone. The fire was right there, waiting for me to turn the handle so it could rush in. I spun around, coughing violently, my lungs screaming for oxygen. The fire escape, the window in the living room. I navigated the familiar path of my apartment by memory, my shins smashing into the coffee table. A sharp pain I barely registered. I threw the sash up. The night air rushed in, feeding the fire behind me, the pressure in the room changing instantly. I scrambled out onto the metal grate of the fire escape, the iron freezing against my bare soles, a shocking contrast to the oven I had just fled. I climbed down. I did not look back until my feet hit the concrete of the alleyway. Only then, shivering in my thin pajamas, did I turn around to look up at the 4th floor. It looked like a wound in the night sky. My apartment, the place where I had lived for 5 years, the place where I kept my books, my clothes. My life was a box of violent orange light. Flames licked out of the window I had just crawled through, curling up toward the roof like grasping fingers. Glass shattered somewhere above, raining down like diamonds, forcing me to sprint toward the street. By the time the fire trucks arrived, screaming their arrival with sirens that tore through the quiet neighborhood, I was standing on the curb, hugging myself to stop the shaking. It was not cold out, but I could not stop shivering. I watched the water arcs hit the building, turning to steam, but the orange glow was stubborn. It fought back. A firefighter with soot smudged across his cheek walked past me, dragging a heavy hose. I stepped into his path, my voice sounding ragged and small in my own ears. "The 4th floor," I croaked. "Unit 4B. Is there any chance?" He stopped and looked at me. He did not offer false hope. He did not give me the soft, comforting lie I desperately wanted. He looked at the intensity of the blaze, then back at me, his eyes tired and grim. "I am sorry, ma'am," he said, his voice flat. "The structural damage is significant. Everything in that unit is going to be a total loss, even if the fire does not touch it. The smoke and water will... A total loss. The words hung in the air between us. My brain tried to process them, to itemize the things that were currently turning to ash. My birth certificate, the dress I wore to my sister's wedding, the cash I had hidden in the hollowed-out book for emergencies, my entire life, erased in under an hour. I stood there, dead silent, watching my existence burn. I felt weightless, unmoored, like an astronaut whose tether had just been cut. I had nothing, no keys, no shoes, no ID, just the phone in my hand. My thumb hovered over the screen. It was 3 a.m. I knew it was late. I knew I shouldn't. But the emptiness inside me was so vast, I needed something to fill it. Some voice to tell me that it was going to be okay, that I was still a person even if I didn't have a home anymore. I dialed my mother. It rang 4 times, 5 times. I was about to hang up, terrified I had woken them for nothing, when the line clicked open. Hello? The voice was groggy, sharp with irritation. It was Linda Hale, my mother. Mom? My voice broke. I squeezed my eyes shut, tears leaking out, hot and fast. Mom, it is Daisy. Daisy? She sighed, a loud, exasperated sound that crackled in my ear. Do you have any idea what time it is? It is 3 a.m. Why are you calling? She did not ask if I was okay. She did not hear the terror in my voice. She only heard the inconvenience. Mom, there was a fire, I sobbed, the dam finally breaking. My apartment, it is gone. Everything is gone. I am standing on the street. I have no shoes. I do not know what to do. There was a silence on the other end, not a shocked silence, but a calculating one. I waited for the gasp. I waited for her to say, "Oh my God. Daisy, are you hurt? Stay right there. We are coming." "A fire?" she repeated, her tone flat. "How bad?" "Total," I choked out, watching a section of the roof collapse inward with a shower of sparks. "The fireman said it is a total loss. Mom, I have nowhere to go. Can I come home? Just for a few days? Just until I figure out the insurance and find a place? Please, I am scared." I heard movement on the other end of the line, the rustle of sheets, a muffled conversation. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, desperate for a lifeline. Then, a deeper voice came on the line. Gordon Hale, my stepfather. "Daisy," he said. There was no warmth in it. His voice was as cold and hard as the pavement under my feet. "Gordon," I said, hope rising slightly. "Gordon, the building is burning. I escaped with nothing." "Listen to me," he said, cutting me off. He spoke slowly, articulating every word as if he were speaking to a slow child or a telemarketer he wanted to get rid of. "We have a busy week. Your mother is not feeling well. We cannot have you here bringing all that drama and chaos into the house." I froze. The heat from the fire was still hitting my face, but my blood turned to ice water. "Drama? Gordon, I almost died. I am asking for a place to sleep. Just a couch. Please." "You are a grown woman, Daisy," Gordon said. His voice was final. "You are 32 years old. If you did not have a contingency plan, that is on you. This is not our problem. You are grown. Figure it out." "Wait," I pleaded, panic rising again, different from the fire panic, a deeper, lonelier panic. "Mom? Let me talk to Mom." "She agrees with me," Gordon said. "Do not call back tonight. We need our sleep." The line went dead. I stared at the phone screen, the call timer freezing at 2 minutes and 14 seconds. The disconnect symbol flashed at me, mocking and cruel. I lowered the phone slowly. Around me, the chaos of the emergency response continued. Firemen shouted orders. A woman 2 doors down was screaming about her cat, but I was in a bubble of absolute silence. Not our problem. I sank down onto the curb. My legs just gave out. I pulled my knees to my chest, trying to make myself as small as possible. A neighbor, an older woman from the first floor whose name I could never remember, saw me. She walked over, her face pale, and draped a heavy wool blanket over my shoulders. "Here, honey," she whispered. "You are shaking." I nodded, unable to speak. I pulled the blanket tight. It smelled like mothballs and lavender detergent. It was the smell of a stranger's care. I sat there and replayed the conversation. I dissected it like an autopsy. They did not ask if I was burned. They did not ask if I had inhaled smoke. They did not ask where I was physically located. They did not offer to send $10 for a taxi or a hotel. They just wanted to go back to sleep. I stared at the burning building, the flames reflecting in the screen of my dead phone. Why? We were not close, not really, but we were not estranged. We did holidays. I sent cards. We had Sunday dinners once a month. This level of cruelty felt alien, like a mask had slipped, and then, like a spark jumping from the building to dry grass, a memory ignited in my brain. 3 days ago, it had been a Tuesday. I was home early from work with a migraine. The doorbell had rung, and when I looked through the peephole, I was stunned to see my mother standing there. Linda Hale never visited me. In the 5 years I had lived in this apartment, she had been here exactly 0 times. We always met at her house or at a restaurant. I had opened the door, surprised. "Mom, is everything okay?" She had breezed past me, not hugging me, just walking straight into the living room. She was wearing her oversized sunglasses, even though it was dim inside. "I was just in the neighborhood," she had said, her voice tight. "Thought I would see how you are living." She did not sit down. She moved through the apartment like she was inspecting a hotel room. She walked to the bookshelf, running a finger along the spines. She tapped the screen of my television. "This is new," she had observed. 40 inches? 50, I had corrected, confused. "I got it on sale last Black Friday. Mom, do you want some tea?" She ignored the offer. She walked into my bedroom. I followed her, feeling an odd prickle on the back of my neck. She stood in the doorway, looking at my jewelry box on the dresser, then at the closet. "Do you have renter's insurance, Daisy?" she asked suddenly. "What?" The question came out of nowhere. "Insurance?" she said. Turning to look at me, she lowered her sunglasses slightly, her eyes scanning my face. "With all these electronics, and your grandmother's jewelry, if something happened, theft, or a pipe bursting, you need to be covered." "I have insurance, Mom," I said, rubbing my temples where the migraine was throbbing. "I got it when I signed the lease. The landlord required it." "How much?" she pressed. "What is the coverage limit?" "I do not know," I shrugged. "Maybe $50,000? Why does it matter?" She hummed, a low sound in her throat. She looked around the room one last time, her gaze lingering on the smoke detector on the ceiling, then down to the surge protector behind the nightstand. 50,000, she murmured, almost to herself. "That is adequate and personal property replacement? Is it actual cash value or replacement cost?" "Mom, why are you asking me this?" I had laughed nervously. "Are you selling insurance now?" She had smiled then. It was a thin, tight smile that did not reach her eyes. "Just looking out for you. Daisy, you are so careless with details. I just wanted to make sure you were protected." She left 10 minutes later. She didn't even drink the water I poured her. I sat on the curb, the memory playing in a loop. At the time, I had brushed it off. Just Linda being Linda. Just my mother being critical and money-obsessed. I told myself it was a coincidence. Just a random visit from a mother who suddenly cared about policy limits and replacement costs. But now, staring at the charred skeleton of my bedroom window, the coincidence felt heavy. It felt like a stone in my stomach. She had come to the apartment for the first time in years. She had inventoried my belongings with her eyes. She had asked about the insurance money. And 3 days later, the apartment was ash. I shivered beneath the neighbor's wool blanket, but the cold was coming from inside me now. I looked at the firemen battling the blaze, the water mixing with the soot to run black in the gutters. I wanted to believe it was an electrical short. I wanted to believe it was a neighbor's cigarette. I wanted to believe it was bad luck. because the alternative was a thought so dark I could barely let it form in my mind. My parents had just told me that my homelessness was not their problem, but their problem 3 days ago had been ensuring I had enough coverage to pay out on a total loss. I wiped the soot from my cheek, leaving a black smear on my hand. I looked at the orange flames one last time, watching them devour the last of my sanctuary. If this was not an accident, then who wanted to burn my life down? The morning after the fire did not bring the sun. It brought a gray, heavy silence that felt like a hangover from a night of drinking poison. I woke up on a beige sectional sofa that was not mine, staring at a ceiling that had no water stains, no cracks, and no soot, for a terrifying second. I did not know where I was. Then the smell hit me, even after a shower and a change of clothes. The scent of wet ash and melted plastic seemed to be oozing out of my pores. It was stuck in my hair. It was stuck in my mind. I was in the apartment of Mila Brooks. Mila was a colleague from Northbridge Compliance Group, a woman I had worked with for 3 years but never socialized with outside of office happy hours. When the fire trucks were rolling up their hoses and the police were taking statements, I had scrolled through my phone contacts, my thumb hovering over names of friends I knew would ask too many questions. I could not handle pity. I could not handle the dramatic gasps. So I had called Mila. She was the type of person who kept her desk impeccably organized and never engaged in break-room gossip. I gambled that her pragmatism would extend to a crisis. I was right. She had picked me up at 4 a.m, driven me to her place, and pointed to the shower. She did not ask how it started. She did not ask about my parents. Now, she walked into the living room holding 2 mugs. She was dressed for work, her blouse crisp and ironed, a stark contrast to my borrowed sweatpants that were 2 sizes too big. "Drink," she said, setting a mug on the coaster beside me. "It is chamomile. It helps with the shock." I sat up, my muscles screaming in protest. Every inch of my body felt bruised, though I had not fallen. "Thank you. Mila, I do not know how to repay you for this. I just needed a place to—" "Stop," she cut in gently. She sat on the armchair opposite me, her posture rigid but her eyes kind. "You do not need to explain. You do not need to apologize. You are safe here. That is the only thing that matters right now. I called the office. I told them you had a family emergency. You have the week off." A family emergency. The phrase made me want to laugh. A hysterical, bubbling sound that I swallowed down with a gulp of hot tea. If only she knew. My family was not the emergency. My family was the absence of help during the emergency. "I need to call the insurance company," I said, my voice sounding raspy. "I need to file the claim. I need to find a new apartment. I have nothing. Mila, I have the clothes on my back and a phone with 12% battery." "Charge the phone," Mila said, pointing to a cable on the side table. "Make the call. Take your time. I am going to work, but I left a spare key on the counter. There is food in the fridge. Eat." She left with the quiet efficiency of a ghost. I was alone again. I spent the next hour sitting in the silence, staring at the blank television screen. I tried to summon the energy to cry, but the tears were gone. In their place was a cold, hard knot of anxiety about money. I had savings, but not enough to replace an entire life. The furniture, the clothes, the electronics, the security deposit for a new place. It added up to a number that made my chest tight. My renter's insurance was my lifeline. I had been responsible. I had paid my premiums on time every single month for 5 years. I remembered the policy limit, $50,000 for personal property. It was enough. It had to be enough. I dialed the number for the insurance agency. I expected a call center, a bored voice reading from a script, a long hold time with terrible jazz music. Instead, when I punched in my policy number, the call was transferred immediately. "Ms. Martin?" a male voice asked. He sounded alert, guarded. "Yes, this is Daisy Martin. I am calling to report a fire, my apartment. It is a total loss." "We know," the voice said. We received the report from the fire department early this morning. Ms. Martin, I am deeply sorry for what you are going through. Thank you, I exhaled, leaning back against the sofa cushions. I need to know what the next steps are. I need to get an advance on the claim if possible. I need to buy clothes and toiletries. There was a pause on the line. It lasted too long. Ms. Martin, we cannot process any disbursements over the phone for this specific claim, the man said. His tone had shifted. The sympathy was gone, replaced by a bureaucratic wall. There are some irregularities in the file that we need to clarify. We need you to come into the branch office, today, if possible. Irregularities? I sat up straighter. What irregularities? My payments are up to date. I checked last month. It is not about the payments, he said. It is about the policy details. We need to verify your identity and review some documents with you in person. Can you be at our downtown office at 2 o'clock? Yes, I can be there. I hung up, the knot in my stomach tightening. Why did I need to go in? People lost their homes every day. Insurance companies usually wired money to hotels. They did not drag victims into offices unless something was wrong. I borrowed a simple gray dress from Mila's closet that fit well enough. Though it was tight in the shoulders, I tied my hair back to hide the singed ends. I wanted to look professional. I wanted to look like a victim who deserved compensation, not a suspect. The insurance office was on the 12th floor of a glass tower downtown. It smelled of carpet cleaner and air conditioning. I was led into a small, windowless conference room by a woman who did not smile. She offered me a bottle of water, then left me alone. 10 minutes later, a man in a gray suit walked in. He carried a thick file folder. He introduced himself as Mr. Henderson, the senior claims adjuster. He did not shake my hand. He sat down across from me, opened the file, and clasped his hands on top of it. Ms. Martin, he began, his eyes scanning my face with an intensity that made me squirm. We are reviewing the report from the fire marshal. The investigation is still ongoing, of course, but before we discuss the payout, we need to address the beneficiary status of your policy. Beneficiary? I frowned. I do not understand. It is renter's insurance. I am the beneficiary. It covers my property. Usually, yes. Mr. Henderson said. But in the event of a loss of life, or in certain structured payout agreements, the designated beneficiaries take precedence, and regarding the property payout authorization, our records show a specific directive was filed regarding who is authorized to receive the funds. He slid a piece of paper across the polished wood table. This form was submitted to our office 5 months ago, he said. I looked down. It was a change of beneficiary and payout authorization form. The header was standard. The font was boring, but the names typed in the center of the page made the room spin. Primary beneficiaries, Linda Hale and Gordon Hale. Allocation, 100%. I stared at the names. My parents. My parents who had told me last night that my homelessness was not their problem. My parents who had refused to let me sleep on their couch. This is a mistake, I whispered, my finger trembling as I pointed at the paper. I never did this. Why would I do this? I am 32 years old. Why would I make my parents the beneficiaries of my renter's insurance? That is what we wondered. Mr. Henderson said, but the form is notarized, and it is signed. He tapped the bottom of the page. I looked at the signature. Daisy Martin. The breath trapped in my throat. It was my signature. The loop of the D, the sharp cross of the T, the way the N trailed off at the end. It was perfect. If you put it next to my driver's license, you would say it was a match. But I knew, with the absolute certainty of my own existence, that I had never held a pen to this paper. I had not been to this office in 5 years. This is a forgery, I said, my voice shaking. I did not sign this. Ms. Martin, Mr. Henderson said, his voice dropping an octave. This form was not submitted online. It was not mailed in. It was submitted in person, here, at this branch, by a woman identifying herself as you. carrying your identification. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. In person? 5 months ago? Yes, 5 or 6 months ago. We have the date stamp right here. I tried to think back. 5 months ago, I was working 60 hours a week. I was barely sleeping. I definitely did not come here to sign over my assets to Linda and Gordon. I am telling you, it was not me, I insisted, looking Mr. Henderson in the eye. My mother, she visited me 3 days ago. She was asking about the insurance. She was asking about the limits. She knew. Mr. Henderson did not look convinced. He looked skeptical. You are suggesting your mother impersonated you to change your policy beneficiaries half a year before a fire occurred? Yes, I said. I know how it sounds, but she… Ms. Martin, he interrupted. There is something else, because of the size of the claim and the total nature of the destruction. We have a specialized fire investigator assigned. He has already flagged the file. Flagged it? Why? He contacted us this morning. He is looking into financial motive. The words hung in the cold air of the room. Financial motive. Wait, I said, realizing the trap I was in. If you think I burned my own apartment for money, that is insane. I lost everything. And if this form is valid, which it is not, then I would not even get the money. My parents would. So where is my motive? That is the question, Mr. Henderson said smoothly. Unless, of course, the beneficiary change was a way to shield assets, or unless there is an agreement between you and the beneficiaries. I stood up. I could not sit there anymore. The walls were closing in. They thought I was in on it. They thought I had conspired with Linda and Gordon to burn down my own home for a $50,000 check. They did not know that Linda and Gordon would sooner let me starve than share a penny of that money with me. I need a copy of this form, I said, my hand gripping the back of the chair to steady myself, and I need to speak to this investigator. We will provide a copy. Mr. Henderson said, but the claim is frozen. Miss Martin, until the investigation clears the cause of the fire and the validity of these documents, no money will be released to anyone. I walked out of the building into the blinding afternoon sun. I felt sick. My head was pounding with a rhythm that matched my heart rate. I needed to sit down. I found a concrete bench near a bus stop and collapsed onto it. I pulled my phone out. I needed to call someone. I needed a lawyer. But lawyers cost money, and I had just been told my bank account was essentially zero until further notice. My phone buzzed in my hand. A notification. An email. I stared at the screen. It was from the Human Resources Department at Northbridge Compliance Group. The subject line was, Urgent. Meeting regarding recent concerns. I frowned. I was on emergency leave. Mila had called it in. Why were they emailing me? I opened the email. Dear Ms. Martin, we were terribly sorry to hear about the incident at your residence. However, we have received a concerning report that requires your immediate attention. Earlier today, we received an anonymous communication expressing grave concern for your mental stability. The caller alleged that you have been exhibiting erratic behavior, making threats of self-harm, and displaying signs of a severe breakdown in the weeks leading up to this event. Given the sensitive nature of our work in compliance and data security, we must take these allegations seriously. We are placing you on administrative leave pending a fitness for duty evaluation. Please do not log into the company network until further notice. Regards, HR Director. I dropped the phone. It clattered onto the concrete pavement, landing face down. I stared at the device as if it were a bomb, an anonymous call. Erratic behavior, threats of self-harm. It was a lie, a complete, fabricated, malicious lie. I had been the top performer in my department for 2 quarters running. I had been sane. I had been boringly, predictably stable. But the timing was surgical. If I went to the police now and screamed that my parents burned my house down, who would they believe? Would they believe the calm, respectable couple living in the suburbs? Or would they believe the woman who had just lost her home, who was on administrative leave from her job because of mental instability, and who was accusing her own flesh and blood of a heinous crime. The email was not just an annoyance, it was a preemptive strike. Linda. I could hear her voice in my head. I could see the way she had looked at my apartment 3 days ago. Calculating the value of the things she was about to destroy, she did not just want the insurance money, that was just the payload. The method was the destruction of my credibility. She wanted to make sure that if I ever figured it out, if I ever tried to open my mouth, I would look like a hysterical daughter lashing out in grief. They had stolen my home. They had stolen my safety. And now, with a single phone call to my boss, they were trying to steal my voice. I picked up my phone. The screen was cracked, a single hairline fracture running diagonally across the glass. I ran my thumb over the sharp edge. I did not cry. The tears were finished. A cold, dark resolve began to settle in my chest, filling the empty space where my heart used to be. They thought they had checkmated me. They thought I was just Daisy, the quiet daughter who took the insults and asked for seconds. They thought I would crumble under the weight of the tragedy and the shame. I looked at the cracked screen, at the email from HR, and then at the photo I had taken of the change of beneficiary form. "Okay," I whispered to the empty street. "You want to play a game? Let us play." I stood up. I was not going back to Mila's to hide under the blanket. I had work to do. If they wanted to paint me as unstable, I would show them exactly how focused I could be. I dialed the number for the fire investigator Mr. Henderson had mentioned. I was done being the victim. It was time to be the witness. The coffee shop Caleb Stroud chose was not the kind of place you went for a latte art Instagram post. It was a dimly lit, narrow establishment on the edge of the industrial district, where the tables were bolted to the floor and the air smelled of stale roasted beans and rain. It was neutral ground. It was a place where people met to discuss things they did not want overheard. I arrived 5 minutes early, but Caleb was already there. He was sitting in the back corner, his back to the wall, watching the front door. He did not look like a man who pushed paper for an insurance company. He looked like he had been carved out of something hard and weather-beaten, like driftwood or granite. He wore a faded canvas jacket and had a face full of deep lines that suggested he spent a lot of time squinting into smoke and debris. I approached the table. He did not smile. He did not stand up. He simply nodded at the empty metal chair across from him. "Daisy Martin," he said. It was not a question. His voice was like gravel rolling in a cement mixer. "Mr. Stroud," I replied. Sitting down, I clutched my bag to my chest, a defensive reflex I could not seem to shake since the fire. "The insurance adjuster, Mr. Henderson, said you wanted to talk about motive." Caleb watched me for a long moment. His eyes were a pale, unsettling gray. They moved over my face, taking in the dark circles under my eyes, the tension in my jaw, the way my hands were trembling slightly. It felt like he was scanning me for cracks in my structure. "Henderson talks about money," Caleb said. "I talk about fire. They are different languages." He reached down to the floor and picked up a thick leather satchel. He placed it on the table with a heavy thud and unbuckled the straps. He pulled out a series of glossy photographs and laid them out in a precise grid between us. I flinched. They were pictures of my apartment, or rather, the corpse of my apartment. The first photo showed my living room, now a cavern of blackened wood and melted drywall. The second showed the kitchen, where the appliances were twisted into grotesque shapes. But the third photo was of my bedroom. It was focused on the corner near the window, where the fire had been hottest. "Look at this," Caleb commanded, tapping the third photo with a callous finger. I forced myself to look. "It is just black. It is all burned." "No," Caleb corrected. "It is not just burned. Look at the pattern on the floor. See that V shape? Fire moves up and out. It follows the path of least resistance. It seeks oxygen." He traced the V shape on the photo. The point of the V was near the baseboard, right behind where my dresser used to be. "The initial report said it might be the outlet," I whispered. "An electrical short." Caleb shook his head slowly. "I pulled the outlet. The wiring inside the wall was intact until the heat melted the insulation from the outside in. An electrical fire starts inside the wall and bursts out. This fire started on the floor and climbed the wall. He slid another photo across. It showed a close-up of the floorboards. They were charred in a way that looked deep, almost alligator-skinned. "Wood burns at a predictable rate," Caleb said, his voice lowering. "But this section? It burned hot, and too fast. When I see charring this deep in a localized spot, it tells me the fire had help. It tells me something was feeding it." My mouth went dry. "Feeding it? You mean like a chemical?" "I mean an accelerant," Caleb said. He leaned back, crossing his arms over his chest. "I am not writing my final report yet. I am waiting on lab results for the debris samples. But I have been doing this for 30 years. I know what an accident looks like. An accident is messy. An accident is random. This?" He gestured to the grid of photos. "This has a personality. This wanted to consume that specific room first." I stared at the photos, a sick feeling rising in my throat. My bedroom, the place where I slept, the place where I kept my most personal things. "Mr. Stroud," I said, my voice barely audible, "are you saying someone set it on purpose?" "I am saying the physics do not add up to a mishap," he replied bluntly, "and when the physics do not make sense. I look at the people." He pulled a small notebook from his pocket and flipped it open. He did not look at the page. He looked at me. "So, let us talk about access. Who had a key?" "Just me," I said immediately. "And the landlord, but he lives in Florida. He uses a management company." "Who else?" Caleb pressed. "Boyfriends? Ex-husbands? Angry neighbors?" "No one," I said. "I am single. I keep to myself. I work in compliance. I lead a very boring life. Mr. Stroud." "What about family?" he asked. The word hung in the air between us. Family. I hesitated. I thought about the beneficiary form. I thought about the smear campaign at work. I thought about the way Linda had walked around my apartment, touching things. "My mother visited," I admitted, 3 days before the fire. "But she does not have a key. I let her in." Caleb's eyes narrowed slightly. 3 days ago. How long was she there?" "Not long," I said, trying to remember the exact timeline. "She came in the afternoon. She looked around. She asked some weird questions about my insurance, but she was only there for maybe half an hour. 40 minutes tops. She did not even sit down." Caleb looked down at his notebook. He tapped his pen against the paper, a rhythmic, ticking sound. "Half an hour," he repeated. "Yes," I said. "Why?" "Because," Caleb said, looking up again, "your building has a smart lock system on the unit doors. It records every time the bolt is thrown and every time it is engaged. It is a security feature." He turned the notebook around so I could read his scrawl. "Unit 4B, Tuesday, unlocked, 1:45 p.m., locked, 4:12 p.m. I stared at the numbers. "That is impossible," I said, shaking my head. "I remember. She came at 1:45. That part is right. But she left. She must have left by 2:30. I remember looking at the clock because I had a migraine and I wanted to take a nap." "Did you lock the door behind her?" Caleb asked. I paused. "I think so. I mean, I always do. I was lying on the couch. I heard the door click." "The log says the door was unsecured for nearly 2.5 hours, Caleb said. 2 hours and 27 minutes. To be precise, the bolt was not thrown back until 4:12. My mind raced. 2 hours? If she had left at 2:30, why was the door unlocked until 4? Had I forgotten to lock it? Or... "Wait," I said, a chill running down my spine. "If the door was unlocked, did she stay? Or she came back," Caleb suggested. "Or she rigged the latch so it would not engage. Or someone else walked in right after she walked out." He watched me process this. He was letting me do the math. If Linda had been in my apartment for 2 hours while I was passed out with a migraine in the bedroom, What had she been doing? 2 hours was enough time to tamper with wiring. 2 hours was enough time to soak the floorboards with something that would dry odorless, but burn like hell. There is something else, Caleb said. He flipped the page of his notebook. The building has a master key system for maintenance. The electronic logs show a master key override was used on your door. When? I asked. 1 week ago, Caleb read, and again on the night of the fire, but not at a normal time, the night of the fire. The master key accessed your lock at 1:12 in the morning. I gasped. I was asleep. The fire started around 3. Exactly, Caleb said. Someone used a master key to enter your apartment 2 hours before the fire started. They entered while you were sleeping. They left no sign of forced entry. But who has the master key? I asked, my voice rising in panic. The maintenance guys? Supposedly, Caleb said. But master keys have a way of floating around, especially if someone pays the right person, or if someone has a connection to the property management firm. I felt sick. Someone had been in my apartment while I slept. Someone had walked into the dark, silent rooms where I was dreaming, and they had done. What? Planted a device? Poured a trail of fuel? Linda knows the property manager, I whispered, the memory surfacing like a dead fish. She mentioned it once. She said she played bridge with the wife of the owner of the maintenance company. She said it was a useful connection. Caleb did not write that down. He just watched me. And there is one more thing, I said, the pieces clicking together in a horrific picture. When she visited, on Tuesday, she asked about the cameras. Caleb's eyebrows shot up. The hallway cameras? Yes, I said, my hands gripping the edge of the table. She was walking around, inspecting the place, and she looked up at the smoke detector, and then she looked at the door, and she asked, "Does this building have those security cameras in the halls? The ones that actually record?" "What did you tell her?" Caleb asked sharply. "I told her I did not know," I said. "I told her I thought they were just for show. I told her the landlord was cheap." Caleb let out a short, sharp breath. He leaned forward, his face inches from the photos of my ruined life. "If you told her they were fake," he said quietly, "then she would feel safe. She would feel invisible. But are they?" I asked. "Are they fake?" "No," Caleb said. "They are very real. But the DVR is kept in a locked server room in the basement. I have not pulled the footage yet. I wanted to talk to you first. I wanted to know where to look." He sat back. Closing the notebook, he looked at me with a mixture of pity and professional detachment. "Daisy," he said, "you need to listen to me very carefully. You are in a dangerous position." "I know," I said. "They are trying to frame me. They changed the insurance policy. They called my job." "It is bigger than that," Caleb said. "If this was arson, and if there was a financial motive, and if you are the one who survives, the narrative is easy to spin. You burned it for the money. You almost died to make it look real. That is the story a prosecutor would tell." "But I did not," I insisted. "I know," Caleb said, "because arsonists who burn their own homes for money do not sleep in them without an escape route planned. And they usually take the valuables out first. You left your laptop. You left your grandmother's jewelry. That tells me you were a victim, not a perpetrator." He leaned in again, his voice dropping to a whisper. "But proving that is going to be hard. And if your family is involved, if your mother was the one in that apartment for 2 hours, if your stepfather has connections to the maintenance crew," he let the sentence hang there. "What do I do?" I asked. I felt like a child asking a teacher for permission to leave the room. "You do nothing," Caleb said firmly. "You do not call them. You do not scream at them. You do not ask them why. If you confront them now, they will close ranks. They will destroy evidence. They will polish their alibis." He tapped the table with his index finger. "You let them think they have won. You let them think you are confused and broken. You let them think the insurance company is investigating you. Why?" "Because people get sloppy when they think they are safe," Caleb said. "If they think you are fighting back, they will be careful. If they think you are a mess, They will make mistakes. They will talk on phones they should not use. They will keep things they should throw away. He gathered the photos and slid them back into the leather satchel. He buckled it shut with a definitive snap. I am going to pull the camera footage, Caleb said. I am going to track that master key usage. I am going to find out exactly what accelerated that fire. He stood up. He looked down at me, his face grim. Go back to wherever you are staying. Keep your head down. If your mother calls, answer. Be the sad daughter. Be the victim. But do not give them a single inch of the truth. Mr. Stroud, I said, standing up as well. Thank you. Do not thank me yet, he said. We are just turning over the first rock. There is a lot of mud underneath. He turned and walked out of the coffee shop, disappearing into the gray afternoon. I stood there for a moment, looking at the empty chair where he had sat. I looked at the table where the photos of my burned bedroom had been. I thought about the V pattern on the floor. I thought about the door being unlocked for 2 hours. I thought about Linda asking about the cameras. The sadness that had been weighing me down for 24 hours began to shift. It did not disappear, but it changed texture. It hardened. It cooled. I paid for my coffee, leaving the change on the table. I walked out into the street. The air was cold, but I did not zip up my jacket. I needed the cold. I needed to feel sharp. My parents had not just abandoned me. They had not just stolen my future insurance money. They had come into my home, my sanctuary, and they had planted the seeds of my destruction while I slept. They had turned my safe haven into a gas chamber. I walked toward the bus stop, my steps steady on the pavement. I was not going to cry anymore. Caleb was right. I would be the sad daughter. I would be the confused victim. I would play the part they had written for me. But while they were watching the performance, I would be watching the exits. And when the time was right, I would be the one locking the door. I did not sleep that night. I spent the dark hours researching lawyers on my cracked phone screen, searching for terms like insurance fraud, forgery defense, and beneficiary disputes. Most of the websites looked cheap, featuring men in ill-fitting suits pointing at the camera with slogans like, "We fight for you." I did not want someone who fought for billboards. I wanted someone who fought for blood. By dawn, I had found a name, Nina Halpern. Her website had no slogans and no pictures of gavels. It just had a bio that read like a warning label. She was a former prosecutor who had switched sides to handle complex fraud litigation. The reviews described her as unpleasant but effective, and a shark in a silk blouse. That was exactly what I needed. I used the last of my credit limit to pay for a consultation fee that cost more than my monthly car payment. I walked into her office at 10 o'clock in the morning. The office was not in a glass tower like the insurance company. It was in a renovated brownstone, smelling of old paper and expensive espresso. Nina Halpern did not look up when I entered. She was reading a document on her desk, a red pen poised in her hand like a dagger. She was older than me, perhaps in her late 40s, with hair cut into a sharp geometric bob that looked like it could cut glass. "Sit," she said, still not looking up. I sat. I placed my hands on my knees to stop them from shaking. I started to speak, my voice trembling with the residue of the last 2 days. "My name is Daisy, and my parents—" "Stop," Nina said. She finally looked up. Her eyes were dark and completely devoid of warmth. "I read your intake form. Apartment fire. Suspicious beneficiary change. Arson investigation. Smear campaign at work. You are in a deep hole. Ms. Martin." "I did not do it," I choked out, feeling the tears prick at my eyes again. "I lost everything, and they are trying to say I—" Nina held up a hand. "Do not cry. Crying is a biological response to stress. It is useless in a legal battle. Crying does not win against people who are calculating. If you want sympathy, call a therapist. If you want to survive. Dry your eyes and show me the document." I swallowed the lump in my throat. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. She was right. Tears were fuel for Linda. Nina needed facts. I pulled out the printed copy of the change of beneficiary form that Mr. Henderson had given me. I slid it across the mahogany desk. Nina picked it up. She did not just glance at it. She pulled a magnifying glass from her drawer, an actual, heavy brass magnifying glass, and leaned over the paper. She studied the signature at the bottom, the signature that looked exactly like mine. "It is a good forgery," Nina said after a long minute. "Better than most, usually. Family members get sloppy because they think no one will check. But this was practiced." "It looks just like my signature," I said quietly. "That is why I am scared. How can I prove it is not mine?" "Because of the hesitation," Nina said. She turned the paper around and pointed to the loop of the D. "Look here. See that tiny blot of ink at the top of the curve? And another one right here, at the cross of the T?" I squinted. I saw what she meant. Tiny, microscopic pools of black ink. "When you sign your name," Nina explained, her voice clinical, "you use muscle memory. You write it in one fluid motion. The pen glides, but a forger is drawing, not writing. They are copying a shape, and right here," she tapped the ink blot. The hand hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. The pen stopped moving while the eye checked the reference. That pause allowed the ink to bleed into the paper fiber. It is the microscopic stutter of a lie. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. "So we can prove it?" "We can argue it," Nina corrected. "Handwriting analysis is subjective. It helps, but it is not a smoking gun. We need context. Who submitted this?" "The insurance guy said a woman brought it in," I said. "A woman claiming to be me," Nina pulled a file folder toward her. "I made a call to the legal department of your insurance carrier this morning before you arrived. I have a contact there. I asked for the internal submission log notes. Insurance clerks write notes on everything to cover their own backs." She opened the file and read from a printed email. "Here, the clerk who processed the change, a Ms. Reynolds, wrote a note in the system. Policyholder submitted change in person. Stated reason. Estate planning update. Note. Policyholder seemed in a rush. Mentioned her daughter was very busy with work and she was handling the paperwork to help out." I froze. "Her daughter?" I repeated. "But if she was pretending to be me, she would be the daughter." "Exactly," Nina said, a thin, predatory smile appearing on her face. The clerk noted that the woman said, "My daughter is busy." It was a slip, a tiny verbal slip. The woman was posing as the policyholder, Daisy Martin, but in the moment of making small talk, she reverted to her natural role. She forgot she was supposed to be Daisy and spoke as Daisy's mother. "Linda," I whispered. "That is exactly what she does. She frames everything as her being the martyr, the helper. I am just helping my daughter." She could not even stay in character because her ego is too big. "It is a strong piece of circumstantial evidence," Nina said. "But the clerk might not testify, or she might misremember. We need something harder. Look at the stamp." She pointed to the notary seal on the bottom of the forgery. "Quick Seal Notary Services, 4482 Elm Street. Commission expires 2028. "This is not a bank notary," Nina said. "Banks have cameras everywhere. Banks verify IDs with UV scanners. This is a strip mall notary, a place you go when you want fewer questions asked." "The form says ID checked," I pointed out. "Of course it does," Nina scoffed. "If they wrote ID not checked, they would lose their license. But strip mall notaries are businesses. They want the $5 fee. Sometimes they glance at a license. Sometimes they just look at a confident woman in a nice coat and assume she is who she says she is." She stood up. "Grab your coat. Daisy, we are going to Elm Street." The drive was silent. I sat in the passenger seat of Nina's pristine silver sedan, watching the city blur by. I felt like I was in a dream. Yesterday, I was homeless and jobless. Today, I was hunting for evidence with a lawyer who terrified me more than the fire did. Quick Seal Notary was sandwiched between a vape shop and a discount nail salon. The windows were covered in faded advertisements for tax preparation and shipping services. A bell jingled as we walked in. The air inside smelled of toner and stale coffee. Behind the counter sat a man who looked like a nervous bird. He was thin, balding, and wore a sweater vest that had seen better days. "Can I help you, ladies?" he asked, his eyes darting between Nina and me. Nina placed her business card on the counter. It landed with a heavy, authoritative slap. "Nina Halpern, attorney at law," she announced. "We are investigating a fraudulent document notarized in this establishment 5 months ago. I suggest you stop organizing those paper clips and listen." The man went pale. "Fraudulent? Now wait a minute. I follow all procedures. I check every ID. You cannot come in here and accuse me of—" "I am not accusing you yet," Nina said smoothly. "I am giving you a chance to be a witness instead of a defendant. If a fraudulent document passed through your hands, you are either a co-conspirator or a victim of deception. Which one is it?" The man swallowed hard. I am a victim, obviously. I check IDs." "Good," Nina said. "Then you will have no problem letting us see your security footage." "Footage?" The man blinked. "From 5 months ago? I do not keep—" "Do not lie to me," Nina cut in. "I know your insurance underwriter requires a minimum of 6 months of video retention for liability protection, especially for a high-risk business like this. If you tell me you deleted it, I will have a subpoena for your hard drives by this afternoon, and my forensic tech will recover it anyway. And then we will talk about destruction of evidence." The man crumbled. He was not a criminal mastermind. He was just a guy trying to sell stamps. "Okay," he squeaked. "Okay, I have the backups. I keep them on the cloud. What was the date?" I gave him the date from the form. He typed it into his computer, his fingers shaking slightly. "What time?" he asked. "The timestamp on the notary seal says 10:15 in the morning," Nina said. He clicked the mouse. A video window opened on his screen. "Turn the monitor around," Nina commanded. He obeyed. I leaned in, my heart hammering against my ribs. The video was grainy. A fisheye view from a camera mounted in the corner of the ceiling. It showed the counter where we were standing. The timestamp read 10:14 a.m. The shop was empty. Then, at 10:15 a.m., the door opened. A woman walked in. She was wearing a tan trench coat and a wide-brimmed hat that obscured the top of her face. She had large, dark sunglasses on. She looked like someone trying very hard to be invisible, which ironically made her stand out. I stopped breathing. I did not need to see her face. I knew that coat. I knew that walk. It was a brisk, purposeful stride. The walk of a woman who believed the world should part for her. "Pause it," Nina ordered. The image froze. "She is covered up," Nina noted. Hat, glasses, scarf. She knew there were cameras. She was careful. "It is her," I whispered. "That is my mother. That is Linda." "We know that," Nina said. "But a jury needs more than a daughter's intuition. They need a unique identifier. Look at her hands. Look at what she is holding." I looked. The woman in the video was placing a document on the counter. Next to the document, she placed her wallet to pull out the cash for the fee. The wallet, it was not a standard black wallet. It was a rich, cognac-colored leather wallet with a very specific gold-linked chain detail along the edge and a distinctive oversized buckle. My stomach dropped, but this time it was not from fear, it was from recognition. "The wallet," I said, pointing at the screen. "That is a Vittorio knockoff. She bought it on a cruise they took 2 years ago. She bragged about it for months. She said it looked just like the $3,000 version. But she got it for $40 in a market in Italy. She showed everyone the gold chain. She said, 'Look at the stitching. Daisy, you can never tell.'" "Is it unique?" Nina asked. "Yes," I said. "The buckle has a scratch on it, a deep scratch from when she dropped it in the parking lot at Thanksgiving last year. Can we zoom in?" Nina looked at the notary. "Zoom," he clicked, the image pixelated, then clarified slightly. "There, on the gold buckle of the wallet sitting on the counter, was a dark, jagged scratch. "Got you," Nina whispered. It was the coldest sound I had ever heard. She turned to the notary. "I want a copy of this video file, raw format, right now, and I want a sworn affidavit from you stating that the woman in this video is the person who presented herself as Daisy Martin." But the ID," the man stammered. "She showed me an ID." "She showed you a fake ID," Nina said. "Or you did not look closely enough. I do not care which one it is right now. Just give me the video, and you might keep your license." 10 minutes later, we were back in the car. Nina had a thumb drive in her pocket. She did not start the engine immediately. She turned to me. "We have them," she said. "The signature hesitation, the clerk's note about the daughter, the video of the body language, and the wallet. The wallet is the anchor. We can match that scratch to the physical object if we can get a warrant to search her house." "So do we go to the police?" I asked. "Do we arrest her?" "Not yet," Nina said. "The police move slow, and arson investigations take months. We need to move fast to protect you. We are going to file a civil motion to freeze the insurance payout due to fraud. We are going to attach this video as an exhibit, and we are going to serve your parents with a notice of intent to sue for identity theft." "They will be furious," I said. "Linda will lose her mind." "Good," Nina said. "That is the point. We are not just building a case, Daisy. We are lighting a fire under them. We are going to show them that we know. When people like your mother and stepfather lose control, they panic. They get sloppy. They start making phone calls they should not make. They start trying to destroy evidence that they forgot about." She started the car. The engine purred to life. "We are going to poke the beast," Nina said. "And then we are going to wait for it to bite itself." I looked out the window as we pulled away. I clutched my phone in my hand. I felt a strange vibration in my chest. It was fear. Yes, but it was also something else. For the first time since I woke up to the smell of smoke. I did not feel like a victim. I felt like a player in the game. Linda had walked into that notary office 5 months ago, wearing a disguise, thinking she was writing the script of my life. She thought she could erase me. She thought she could turn me into a tragedy she could cash in on. But she had left her wallet on the counter. She had been too cheap to buy a real designer bag, and that $40 knockoff was going to cost her everything. "I am ready," I said to Nina. "Good," Nina replied, merging into traffic. "Because the hard part is just starting. They will not go down quietly. They will strike back, and when they do, it will be ugly. You need to be prepared for what your mother is capable of when she is cornered." "I know what she is capable of," I said, thinking of the fire. "She is capable of burning me alive." "Then let us make sure she burns herself instead," Nina said. We drove back toward the city, the thumb drive in Nina's pocket burning hot with the truth. The legal chess match had begun, and I had just moved my first pawn. The basement office of the building manager, Mr. Rios, smelled of stale cleaning fluid and damp concrete. It was a windowless box filled with filing cabinets that looked like they had survived a war. Caleb Stroud stood behind the desk, his presence filling the cramped room. While Mr. Rios typed a password into a computer that hummed with the effort of existing. I stood by the door, my arms crossed, trying to keep my breathing steady. "I am telling you, the system is old." "Mr. Rios said, sweat beading on his upper lip. He was a nervous man who clearly did not like having a fire investigator and a tenant who had just lost everything staring at him. "The cameras are motion-activated to save hard drive space. Sometimes they skip." "Just play the file for Tuesday," Caleb said. His voice was calm, but it had an edge that made Mr. Rios type faster. "Camera 2, the main hallway, start at 1:30 in the afternoon." The monitor flickered, then resolved into a grainy black and white image of the hallway leading to my apartment. It was strange to see it intact. The walls were clean. The carpet was not a sodden mess of ash. It looked like a ghost of the past. "Fast forward to 1:45, Caleb commanded. The timestamp in the corner of the screen sped up, numbers blurred. Then, Caleb said, "Stop." The video froze. There she was, Linda Hale, even in low-resolution monochrome. My mother was unmistakable. She walked with a rigid posture, her chin up, as if she were inspecting the hallway for dust, but it was what she was carrying that made my breath catch in my throat. In her right hand, she held a large, structured tote bag. In her left hand, she carried a small, hard-sided plastic cooler. It was the kind of cooler you would take to a picnic to hold a six-pack of soda or a few sandwiches. It was red and white. I recognized it from their garage. But on the black and white screen, it was just a dark block. "A cooler," I whispered. Why would she bring a cooler to my apartment? She did not bring food. She did not even stay for tea. "Watch," Caleb said, on the screen. Linda reached my door. She did not knock immediately. She looked up and down the hallway. She adjusted the strap of her tote bag. Then she knocked. The video showed the door opening, my arm visible for a split second, and her stepping inside. The door closed. "Okay," Caleb said to Rios. "Jump ahead. Let us see when she leaves." Rios clicked the mouse. The timestamp jumped. 2 o'clock, 2:30, 3 o'clock. The hallway remained empty. "She is still in there," I said, a cold dread pooling in my stomach. "I told you. I thought she left after 30 minutes. I went to lie down. I must have fallen asleep. She was in there while I was sleeping." "Keep going," Caleb said. The timestamp hit 4:12 in the afternoon. The door to Unit 4B opened. Linda stepped out. She looked different now. Her coat was buttoned all the way up. Even though the building was warm, she adjusted her sunglasses. She looked left, then right. "Look at her hands," Caleb pointed out. I leaned in, squinting at the screen. She was holding the large tote bag, but her left hand was empty. The cooler was gone. "She left it," I said. "She left the cooler inside." "Or she emptied it and put it in the tote," Rios suggested helpfully. "No," Caleb said, his eyes glued to the screen. "Look at the way the tote bag hangs. It is flat against her hip. If that hard-sided cooler was inside, the bag would be bulging. It would be rigid. That bag is empty, or close to it. The cooler stayed in the apartment." My mind raced. A plastic cooler. What was inside it? Ice? No. Drinks? No. "A cooler is insulated," Caleb murmured, as if reading my thoughts. "It keeps things cold, but it also keeps things contained. It is airtight. If you wanted to bring something volatile into a room, something that smells strong, or something that needs to be kept stable, a cooler is a perfect transport vessel." "Where did she go?" I asked. "Show me where she went." "Switch to the service exit camera," Caleb ordered. "Camera 4. Rios clicked. The view changed to the back door of the building, a heavy metal door that led out to the alley and the parking lot. At 4:15, the door pushed open. Linda stepped out into the bright afternoon sun. The camera here was better quality, capturing the sharp shadows on the pavement. She did not walk toward the street where the visitor parking was. She walked toward the back of the lot, near the dumpster enclosure. She stopped and pulled her phone out. She typed something quick, then she waited. She stood there for 2 minutes, constantly turning her head, checking the windows of the building above her. She looked like a spy in a bad movie, except this was my mother, and the reality was far more terrifying than fiction. Then, a car rolled into the frame. It was a black sedan, a Lincoln. "That is Gordon's car," I said. "That is my stepfather's car." The car stopped. The passenger window rolled down. Linda said something to the driver, then opened the back door. She tossed the tote bag in. She did not get in immediately. She looked back at the building one last time. Her face was turned upward, toward the 4th floor, toward my window. Then she got in, and the car drove away. "He was there," I said, feeling a fresh wave of betrayal. "I talked to him on the phone that night. He acted like he barely knew what was happening, but he was there. He was the getaway driver." "He was waiting," Caleb corrected. "Which means this was a 2-person operation. Linda planted the package. Gordon provided the extraction." Caleb turned to Rios. I need the access logs for the electronic locks again, specifically for the master key usage. Rios sighed and opened a spreadsheet. I told the police already. We have had issues with the key inventory. Just show me the log for the week of the fire, Caleb said. The spreadsheet filled the screen. Rows of data, dates, times, key IDs. Caleb ran his finger down the screen. Here, Tuesday, 1:12 in the morning, the night of the fire, Unit 4B, accessed by key ID M47. Who has M47? Caleb asked. Rios scrolled to another tab. That key is assigned to Apex Maintenance. They are the vendors we use for HVAC and plumbing emergencies. Apex Maintenance, I repeated. The name sparked a memory. It hit me so hard I almost stumbled. Wait, I said. 2 months ago, at Thanksgiving. I closed my eyes, replaying the scene. We were at my aunt's house. Linda was in the kitchen, helping me dry dishes. It was one of the few times she had been nice to me. We were making small talk. So, Daisy, she had said, casually wiping a plate. Your building seems well managed. Who handles the repairs? Is it the landlord himself? No, I had replied. He uses some company. I think I saw their van. Apex, maybe? Apex, she had repeated. That is a good company. Your stepfather was thinking of investing in some property management stocks. I wonder if they are public. It had seemed so innocent. Just boring financial talk. But she had been fishing. She had been getting the names so she could find a way in. She asked me, I told Caleb, opening my eyes. She asked me specifically about the maintenance company. She wanted the name. Caleb looked at me, his face grim. If they knew the name, they could find someone who works there. Or they could impersonate an employee to get a key copy. Or maybe Gordon's investment talk was not about stocks. Maybe he just paid someone off. So someone came in at 1 a.m, I said, looking at the timestamp again, with a master key, 2 hours before the fire started. Linda planted the cooler in the afternoon, Caleb theorized. But maybe she could not set the timer then, or maybe the cooler contained the fuel. But they needed a secondary trigger. The person at 1 a.m. came in to finish the job, to open the cooler, to pour the accelerant, to set the delay. But who? I asked. Gordon? Maybe, Caleb said, or a hired hand. But the key connects back to the knowledge only your family had. He turned to Rios. I want these video files on a secure drive, and I want the contact info for Apex Maintenance. I need to know exactly who had possession of key M47 on Tuesday night. We left the basement office and walked out into the lobby. The air felt cleaner up here, but my head was spinning. The cooler. The wait in the parking lot. The master key. It was a conspiracy. It was a complex, multi-step plan to destroy me. As we walked toward the front door, a woman was checking her mail at the bank of metal boxes. She looked up and saw me. It was Mrs. Gable from apartment 4C. She was a night owl who often complained about noise. Daisy? She gasped, clutching a bundle of envelopes. Oh, honey, I heard you were safe. I have been so worried. I am okay, Mrs. Gable, I said, forcing a weak smile. Just dealing with everything. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. She looked at Caleb, then back at me. I told the police, you know, she whispered. But they wrote it down so fast, I do not know if they listened. Caleb stopped. He turned his full attention to her. You told the police what, ma'am? About the noise, Mrs. Gable said. The night of the fire. I was up late watching my shows. It must have been around 1 o'clock. I heard a noise in the hall, right outside my door. What kind of noise? Caleb asked gently. A click, she said. Like metal on metal. A sharp click. I looked through my peephole. But it is foggy, you know? I could not see anyone. But then, she wrinkled her nose. Then I smelled it. Smelled smoke? I asked. No, she said. Not smoke. Not yet. It was a sweet smell. Like cheap candy. Or maybe nail polish remover, but sweeter. Sickly sweet. It made my head hurt just for a second. Then it went away. Caleb went very still. He looked at me, and I saw a flash of recognition in his gray eyes. Did it smell like acetone? Caleb asked. Or maybe almond? Yes. Mrs. Gable nodded vigorously. Like fake almond extract. That is it. I thought maybe someone dropped a bottle of perfume, but then 2 hours later, the alarms went off. Thank you, Mrs. Gable, Caleb said. You have been incredibly helpful. If you remember anything else, please call this number. He handed her his card. We walked outside. Caleb led me away from the building, toward his truck. He did not speak until we were out of earshot of the residence. Almond, he said. Sickly sweet. What does it mean? I asked. Acetone and styrofoam make a homemade napalm, Caleb explained. But that smells chemical. The sweet almond smell? That is the signature of a specific type of industrial solvent mixed with an oxidizing agent. It is an old arsonist trick. It burns hot, and it burns clean. It eats through evidence. He looked back at the building. But here is the catch. That mixture is unstable. You cannot carry it around in a bag. It would eat through the plastic. Unless you keep it cold, I realized. In a cooler. Exactly, Caleb said. Linda brought the ingredients in the cooler, kept them stable. Then, at 1 a.m., someone, Gordon, or whoever had that key, came in, mixed them, poured the slurry along the baseboards of your bedroom, and set a slow match timer. They turned my bedroom into a bomb, I said, my voice shaking. They did not just want a fire. They wanted an inferno. They wanted a total loss, Caleb said. Because a partial loss gets investigated for repairs. A total loss gets a check. He opened the door of his truck. We have the video of the cooler, he said. We have the master key log. We have the witness to the smell. And we have the timeline. Is it enough? I asked. Is it enough to arrest them? It is enough to get a search warrant for their house, Caleb said, his eyes hard as flint. We are going to look for that cooler, and we are going to look for traces of that solvent in Gordon's car trunk. He climbed into the driver's seat and looked down at me. Daisy, the person who mixed those chemicals knew what they were doing, or they were following a very specific recipe. This was not a crime of passion. This was a science project. I thought of Linda's cold, calculating stare. I thought of Gordon's indifference. They did their homework, I said. They missed one thing, Caleb said. Starting the engine. What? They forgot that scents linger, he said. They tried to make it look like an electrical fault, but electricity does not smell like almonds. They left a signature, and now we are going to use it to sign their warrant. I watched him drive away. The pieces were coming together. The cooler, the key, the smell. It was a picture of pure malice. My parents had not just been careless, they had been architects of my ruin. But architects leave blueprints, and we had just found them. The vibration of my phone against the wooden coffee table sounded like a drill. It was the 5th time it had buzzed in the last hour. I looked at the screen. It was my Aunt Sarah. I had not spoken to Aunt Sarah in 6 months. Not since Christmas. She was my mother's younger sister, a woman who communicated primarily in Bible verses and passive-aggressive comments about my marital status. Now, she was calling me at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday morning. I picked up. I knew I should not have. But the silence in Mila's apartment was starting to feel heavy, and a part of me needed to know the blast radius of Linda's narrative. Daisy? Aunt Sarah's voice was high and breathless. The tone she used when someone had died, or when she had found a particularly good sale on linen. Oh, thank goodness you answered. Your mother has been frantic. Frantic? I repeated, my voice flat. That is an interesting word choice. Aunt Sarah, considering she told me 2 nights ago that my burning apartment was not her problem. Oh, honey, Sarah sighed, a sound dripping with condescending pity. Linda told me you might say things like that. She said the shock has really scrambled your memory. She said you were hysterical on the phone, screaming about conspiracies and insurance. I gripped the phone tighter. I was not screaming about conspiracies. I was asking for help. Listen to me, Daisy, Sarah continued, ignoring me completely. Trauma does strange things to the brain. Linda is worried you are having a psychotic break. She says you are making up stories to cope with the loss. She says you are blaming everyone but yourself because the guilt of leaving a candle burning is too much for you. I did not leave a candle burning, I said, spacing my words out evenly. It was arson. See? Sarah whispered loudly. That is exactly what she meant. Arson? Honey, who would burn your little apartment? You need to rest. You need to stop talking nonsense before you embarrass the family further. Just apologize to your mother for snapping at her. And come home. I hung up. I did not say goodbye. I just pressed the red button. My hand was shaking, not from fear, but from a rage so hot it felt like it could reignite the fire that took my home. This was the strategy. It was brilliant, evil, and effective. Linda knew I might figure it out. She knew I might find the beneficiary form, so she was salting the earth before I could plant a single seed of truth. She was painting me as the unstable, trauma-ridden daughter who was lashing out in grief. If I went to the police now, Linda would arrive wringing her hands, telling the officers, "My poor daughter. She has been off her medication. She is hallucinating." The phone buzzed again. This time it was my cousin Mike, then my Uncle Bob. The messages were all variations of the same script. Mom is worried. Stop acting crazy. We are praying for your mental health. She had turned the entire family into a wall of noise. She had weaponized their concern. I put the phone on silent and face down. I could not fight a multi-front war. I had to focus on the generals, not the foot soldiers. But the attacks were not limited to my family. At 11:30, I received a notification for a calendar invite on my personal email. It was from the Human Resources Director at Northbridge Compliance, Ms. Prentice. The subject line read, "Wellness check, mandatory." I clicked the link for the video call. I had to take it. If I refused, it would just prove their point that I was unstable. Ms. Prentice appeared on the screen. She was sitting in her office, framed by motivational posters about teamwork and integrity. Her face was composed into a mask of professional concern. "Daisy," she said softly, "thank you for joining me. How are you holding up?" "I am managing," I said. "I am currently dealing with the insurance process. I plan to return to work on Monday." Ms. Prentice frowned slightly. She glanced down at a notepad on her desk. "Actually, that is what I wanted to discuss. We have had some internal discussions regarding your situation. Given the anonymous report we received, and some concerning feedback from your department head regarding your recent stress levels, we feel it would be best for you to take an extended leave of absence." "My department head?" I asked. "My performance reviews have been stellar. I just closed the Anderson file 2 days early." "Yes, but there are concerns about your focus," Ms. Prentice said. "The caller mentioned that you have been increasingly paranoid about data security. They said you made comments about people watching you through the server logs." My body locked up. I had never said that at work. I was a compliance officer. I knew how server logs worked. I would never make a comment that stupid. But I had said something similar to my mother, 3 months ago, over a casual lunch. I had complained about the new monitoring software the company installed. I had joked, "It feels like Big Brother is watching me through the logs every time I send an email." It was a throwaway comment, a joke, but Linda had stored it. She had filed it away in her mental archive, waiting for the moment she could twist it into a weapon. "That is a mischaracterization of a private joke I made months ago," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Ms. Prentice, I believe I am the victim of a targeted harassment campaign. The person calling you is not a concerned whistleblower. They are using personal information to sabotage my employment." Ms. Prentice sighed. She looked at me like I was a child insisting the dog ate my homework. "Daisy, this kind of defensiveness is exactly what we are worried about. We are placing you on a mandatory 30-day medical leave. We need a clearance letter from a psychiatrist before you can return to the building. Your access badge has been deactivated. This is illegal, I said. You are retaliating based on hearsay. We are protecting the company and you, she replied firmly. Please take care of yourself. Daisy. The screen went black. I sat there, staring at my reflection in the dark monitor. They had stripped me of my home. Now they had stripped me of my career. They were systematically cutting every cord that held me to a normal life, leaving me floating in a void where only they could reach me. The door to the apartment opened. Mila walked in, carrying a takeout bag. She took one look at my face and dropped her keys on the counter. What happened? She asked. HR put me on psychiatric leave, I said. They said I am paranoid about server logs. Mila's eyes widened. She walked over and sat next to me. Daisy, I need to tell you something. I did not want to say it earlier because you were already dealing with so much, but this confirms it. Tell me what? The anonymous call to HR, Mila said. I am friends with the receptionist, Brenda. She took the call before transferring it to Prentice. She told me the caller did not just talk about your mental health. The caller used a phrase, a very specific phrase. What phrase? They said, Daisy is going to snap, just like she did with the Baxter Project. I felt the blood drain from my face. The Baxter Project was not a work project. It was a failed science fair project from when I was 12 years old. I had built a volcano, and it had failed to erupt. I had cried for 2 hours. My mother had mocked me for it for years, calling it the Baxter disaster because my partner's name was Baxter. Nobody at work knows about that, I whispered. That was 20 years ago. That was middle school. Exactly, Mila said. The caller slipped up. They used a reference that sounded professional. The Baxter Project. So HR would think it was work-related, but it was personal. It was someone who knows your childhood failures. It was Linda, I said. She called my job and used my 6th grade trauma to get me fired. It was so petty, yet so destructive. It was the hallmark of Linda Hale. She mixed the trivial with the catastrophic. She would burn down a building and then gossip about your bad haircut in the same breath. My phone rang again. I looked at the screen. The name displayed was Mom. I looked at Mila. She nodded. Answer it. Put it on speaker. I swiped the green button. Daisy? The voice was unrecognizable from the cold, dismissive tone of the night of the fire. It was warm, dripping with honey and concern. It was the voice she used when neighbors were watching. Hello, Mother, I said. Oh, sweetie, I am so glad you picked up, Linda cooed. Your Aunt Sarah said you sounded so upset. I have been sick with worry. I know we had a misunderstanding the other night. Gordon and I were just so shocked by your call. We did not know what we were saying. A misunderstanding, I repeated. You told me it was not your problem. I know, she rushed on. And I feel terrible. We were half asleep. You know how Gordon gets when he's woken up, but we want to make it right. We want to see you. You want to see me? Yes. We are having a family dinner this Sunday. Just a small gathering. Aunt Sarah, the cousins, everyone. We want to surround you with love. We want to help you get back on your feet. Gordon even mentioned he might have some leads on a new apartment for you. I felt a physical wave of nausea. She was inviting me to dinner. She was inviting me to sit at her table, break her bread, and play the role of the charity case while she smiled and hid the fact that she had incinerated my life. It was a trap. I knew it. She wanted me there so the family could see me unhinged. She wanted to provoke me in front of an audience. She wanted me to scream at her so she could look at Aunt Sarah and say, "See? I told you she was unstable. Daisy, are you there?" I looked at Mila. Mila held up a piece of paper on which she had written, "Do not go." But then I thought about Nina Halpern. I thought about the legal chess game. If I refused, I was the estranged, bitter daughter. If I went, and I lost my temper, I was the crazy daughter. But if I went, and I stayed calm, if I went, and I asked the right questions, "I will come," I said. "Oh, wonderful," Linda exclaimed. Sunday at 2. I will make your favorite roast. And Daisy, bring any paperwork you have from the insurance. Gordon wants to look it over and make sure they are treating you right. The audacity was breathtaking. She wanted to see the insurance papers. She wanted to check if I had found out about the beneficiary change. She was scouting for threats. I will bring everything, I said. See you Sunday. I ended the call. Are you insane? Mila asked, grabbing my arm. You cannot go there. They are dangerous. They burned your house down. Daisy. What if they poison the food? They will not poison the food with the whole family watching, I said. That is not Linda's style. She needs to be the hero. She needs to be the suffering mother helping her troubled child. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city skyline. Somewhere out there, Nina was drafting subpoenas. Somewhere out there, Caleb was analyzing burn patterns. I need to call Nina, I said. When I got Nina on the phone and told her about the invitation, she was silent for a long moment. It is a risk, she said finally, but it is also an opportunity. She is confident. She thinks she has isolated you with the calls to your family and your job. She thinks you are coming to surrender. I am not surrendering, I said. Then you need to be an ice sculpture, Nina advised, her voice sharp. She will push every button you have. She will mention your ex-boyfriend. She will mention your weight. She will mention your failures. She wants a reaction. Do not give her one, not a tear, not a shout. And then, Nina said, you wait for the moment when she feels safest, when she is bragging, when she is the center of attention, and you ask her a question that requires a lie, a specific lie, one that contradicts the evidence we already have. Like the time she spent in the apartment? I asked. Exactly, Nina said. Make her commit to a story in front of witnesses. Make the family hear her lie. We can use their testimony later to impeach her credibility. Okay, I said. I can do that. One more thing, Nina added. I spoke to Caleb. He is close to getting the warrant, but he needs a physical link. The chemical signature, the almond smell, is strong, but a judge might call it circumstantial. He needs to know where the device came from or where the ingredients were bought. How am I supposed to find that at a dinner party? You do not need to find it, Nina said. You just need to see if anything in that house matches the profile. Caleb found traces of a specific gel thickener in the debris. It is not something you buy at a grocery store. It is industrial, or it is used in hobbies. Hobbies? Yes, like model building or furniture restoration. Does Gordon have a workshop? He has a garage, I said. He tinkers with old radios, and he refinishes antique chairs. Refinishes chairs, Nina repeated. That involves stripping agents, solvents. Keep your eyes open. Daisy, if you see a can of stripping gel or industrial acetone in that garage, do not touch it. Just remember exactly where it is. I will, I promised. I hung up and turned back to Mila. I am going to the dinner, I said, but I need a ride, and I need you to wait down the street. I am not waiting down the street, Mila said, crossing her arms. I am parking right in front of the house, and if you are not out in 2 hours, I am coming in with a tire iron. I smiled. It was the first time I had smiled in 3 days. Deal. The smear campaign had been thorough. My reputation at work was in tatters. My family thought I was having a breakdown. My bank account was frozen. But Linda had made one critical mistake. She thought she was inviting the old Daisy to dinner. The Daisy who sought approval. The Daisy who wanted to be loved. She did not know that Daisy had burned up on Tuesday night. The woman coming to dinner was something else entirely. I was cold ash, and ash cannot be burned. I looked at the date on my phone. Sunday was 3 days away. I spent those 3 days rehearsing. I practiced my facial expressions in the mirror. I practiced smiling while my stomach churned. I practiced the art of the polite, deadly question. By Sunday morning, I was ready. I put on the same gray dress I had worn to the insurance office. I did not wear makeup to hide the circles under my eyes. Let them see the toll. Let them think it was grief. They did not know that the circles were from staying up all night plotting their destruction. I got into Mila's car. The engine started. "Ready?" Mila asked. "No," I said honestly, "but they are not ready for me either." We drove toward the suburbs, toward the manicured lawn and the white picket fence where the monsters lived. The mask was about to fall, and I was going to be the one to rip it off. Saturday morning arrived with a sky the color of a bruised plum. I was sitting in the passenger seat of Caleb Stroud's truck, parked in the far corner of a Home Depot parking lot. The heater was blasting, fighting the chill that seemed to live permanently in my bones now. Caleb handed me a clipboard. On it was a report from a private forensic laboratory, stamped with words like preliminary and high confidence. "Read the highlighted section," Caleb said, taking a sip from a thermos that smelled like strong black coffee. I looked at the paragraph he pointed to. The words were technical: hydrocarbon chains, viscosity agents, polyethylene glycol, but the conclusion was written in plain English. The debris samples taken from the primary ignition point in the master bedroom contained chemical markers consistent with pyrogel, a heavy-duty industrial stripping agent and combustion accelerator. This compound is not sold in standard retail supermarkets. It requires a specialized vendor license or purchase from a construction supply wholesaler. Pyrogel, I said, testing the word. It sounded violent. So it wasn't just gasoline. Gasoline evaporates too fast, Caleb explained. If they poured gasoline at 1 o'clock in the morning, the fumes would have dissipated or exploded prematurely before the timer went off. Gel stays put. Gel sticks to the floorboards. It burns hotter and longer. It ensures that the fire climbs the walls instead of just flashing across the room. He took the clipboard back and flipped to the next page. We traced the local distribution for pyrogel. There are only 3 hardware supply stores in the county that stock it. 2 of them require a contractor's license to buy it. The third one, a place called Miller's Hardware about 10 miles from your mother's house, sells it to the public for furniture restoration. Furniture restoration, I whispered. A memory flashed in my mind. Gordon in the garage, wearing his apron, stripping the varnish off an antique rocking chair. He knew about these chemicals. He used them. Miller's Hardware has a camera system, Caleb said. It is old, but it works. We pulled the tape for the Monday before the fire. He opened a laptop balanced on the center console of the truck. He clicked on a video file. The footage showed a counter cluttered with impulse buy items like flashlights and beef jerky. The timestamp read Monday, February 2nd, 4:32 p.m. A figure walked up to the register. The person was wearing a baseball cap pulled low and a bulky gray sweatshirt that swallowed their frame. They kept their head down, avoiding the camera angle, on the counter. They placed 2 silver cans of pyrogel and a box of heavy-duty timed electrical switches. "Look at the payment method," Caleb said. The figure pulled out a wad of cash. No credit card, no paper trail. But then, the figure did something that made my heart stop. As the cashier rang up the total, the figure in the sweatshirt reached into the pocket of their jeans to pull out more bills. They held the cash in their left hand and used their right thumb to lick the corner of the bill before snapping it down on the counter. Snap, snap, snap. It was a sharp, aggressive motion. I stopped breathing. I had watched my mother count money like that 1,000 times. Whether it was tipping a waiter or paying a contractor, Linda Hale always licked her thumb and snapped the bills. She said it was to make sure they did not stick together, but I always thought it was because she liked the sound of money hitting a surface. "It is her," I said, my voice barely a whisper. I cannot see her face, Caleb, but I know that hand. I know that snap. "There is more," Caleb said. "Watch the bag." The cashier bagged the heavy cans. The figure took the plastic bag, instead of gripping the handles with their fingers. They slid the bag all the way up to the crook of their elbow and clamped it against their side, keeping their hands free to adjust their hat. Linda carried everything like that. Groceries, purses, shopping bags. She always carried weight on her forearm, never in her grip, claiming it saved her manicure. "It is Linda," I said, looking away from the screen. She bought the gel. She bought the timer. She paid cash. It is circumstantial, Caleb warned, closing the laptop. A defense attorney would say lots of people lick their thumbs to count cash. Lots of people carry bags on their elbows. But combined with the video from the notary, combined with the master key, the noose is tightening. My phone buzzed. It was Nina Halpern. Put her on speaker, Caleb said. I tapped the screen. Nina, we are looking at the hardware store footage. Forget the hardware store for a second. Nina's voice crackled through the truck's speakers. She sounded breathless, like she had just run a marathon. I found the money trail. The insurance? I asked. Better, Nina said. I subpoenaed the call logs for the claims department. Do you know that the insurance company received a phone call regarding your policy exactly 24 hours after the beneficiary change was filed? Who called? A woman, Nina said. She did not give her name. She claimed to be you. She asked a hypothetical question. She asked, if a claim is filed for a total loss, what is the standard processing time for the payout check? Does it take 30 days or 60? I felt sick. She was planning the timeline. She changed the beneficiary, and then she immediately wanted to know how long she would have to wait for the cash. It gets worse, Nina continued. I had my forensic accountant dig into the banking information linked to that beneficiary form. The payout was not set to go to Linda and Gordon's joint checking account. That would be too obvious. It was set to go to a newly opened account at a regional credit union. Whose name is on it? Caleb asked. That is the twist, Nina said. The account is in the name of Martha Lewis. But here is the thing. The Social Security number used to open it belongs to a woman who died 3 years ago in Ohio. It is a ghost account. Identity theft, Caleb grunted. But look at the address, Nina said, her voice dropping. The address registered for the account is not in Ohio. It is a post office box at the Pack Mail Center on Chestnut Street. Chestnut Street? I asked. That is the shopping center right behind my mother's subdivision. She walks there to buy her lottery tickets. Exactly, Nina said. And I had an investigator pull the rental agreement for that P.O. box. It was paid for in cash. 6 months in advance. The signature on the rental agreement? Martha Lewis. But the handwriting looks remarkably like the forgery on your insurance form. The loop on the M is identical. They set up a pipeline, I said, staring out the windshield at the gray sky. They did not just want the money, they wanted to hide it. They were going to funnel the insurance payout into this ghost account, cash it out slowly, and no one would ever see a dime hit their real bank accounts. Tax evasion, plus insurance fraud, plus money laundering. Nina listed. If we catch them, they are going to prison for 20 years. Daisy. If, I said. We still need to prove they set the fire. We are close, Caleb said to the phone. We have the accelerant type. We have the purchase. We have the motive. We need the device, Nina said. Or the leftovers. Daisy. That dinner tomorrow is critical. If Gordon is a creature of habit, he does not throw things away. He thinks he is smarter than the police. He probably kept the rest of the pyrogel for his next furniture project because he is too cheap to waste it. I will find it, I said. We hung up. I sat in the truck, feeling the weight of the conspiracy pressing down on me. It was not just a crime of passion. It was a business transaction. My life, my memories, my safety. It was all just overhead costs in a business plan to net $50,000. My phone chimed with a text message. I looked down. Sender. Mom Daisy. Honey. I hope you are resting. We are so excited to see you tomorrow. Please remember to bring any paperwork you have from the insurance company and copies of your lease. Gordon wants to review everything to make sure they are not taking advantage of you. We want to help you rebuild. Love. Mom. I read the text out loud. My voice sounded hollow. Help me rebuild, I repeated. She means she wants to see how much I know. She wants to see if I have the investigation report. She wants to get her hands on the papers so she can shred them. She is fishing, Caleb agreed. She is nervous. If she was confident, she would wait. Asking you to bring the papers is a sign that she is losing sleep. She should be, I said. I typed a reply. I did not want to give her anything. I wanted her to sweat. I will bring everything I have, I typed. See you at 2. I pressed send. You are walking into a trap, Caleb said, looking at me with genuine concern. You know that, right? They are going to gang up on you. They are going to gaslight you until you question your own name. I know, I said. But they are expecting the old Daisy. The Daisy who cries. The Daisy who apologizes for existing. I opened my bag and pulled out a small mirror. I looked at my reflection. My eyes were hard. My mouth was a straight line. I did not look like their daughter anymore. I looked like a stranger. I am not going there to argue, I told Caleb. I am going there to confirm the kill. Later that afternoon, I was back at Mila's apartment. Mila was pacing the living room, looking more anxious than I was. I am going with you, she stated, grabbing her car keys. I am not letting you go into that house alone. What if they get violent? What if Gordon tries to hurt you? They will not hurt me physically, I said, sipping a glass of water. Not with the whole family there. That is why they invited everyone, witnesses. They need an audience to see how crazy I am. If I have a witness of my own, they will be on their guard. They will not slip up. But Daisy, no, Mila, I said firmly. I need them to feel comfortable. I need them to think they are winning. If you are there, Linda will be performing for a stranger. She will be perfect. If it is just family, she will get arrogant. She will get sloppy. Mila sighed, dropping onto the sofa. You are terrifying, you know that? A week ago, you were afraid to ask for a raise. Now you are planning a sting operation on your parents. Fire changes things, I said. It burns away the soft parts. I went into the guest room and laid out my clothes for the next day. The gray dress, black flats, and in my purse, I packed 2 things that were not paperwork. I packed a small voice recorder I had bought at an electronics store, and I packed the printout of the hardware store photo, the one showing the figure with the bag on their elbow. I was not going to show them the photo. Not yet. I just wanted it with me, a talisman of truth in a house of lies. I sat on the bed and stared at the wall. I thought about the ghost account, Martha Lewis. I thought about the P.O. box. I thought about the thumblick count of the money. They were so greedy. That was their weakness. They wanted the $50,000 so badly they had created a ghost to catch it. I pulled out my phone one last time. I opened a new message to Caleb. Subject: Sunday. 2:00. My mother's house. I am ready. I hit send. There was no going back now. The trap was set. The cheese was the insurance papers. The rat was my mother. And I was the one holding the spring. I closed my eyes, but I did not sleep. I visualized the house, the garage, the shelf where Gordon kept his chemicals, pyrogel. If that can was in the garage, it was over. If I could just lay eyes on it, if I could just get a photo of it. I took a deep breath. Tomorrow, I would walk back into the home where I grew up. But I was not going home. I was going to a crime scene, and I was the only detective who knew where the bodies were buried. Mila dropped me off at the curb exactly at 2:00. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, looking at the house where I had spent 18 years of my life. It was a pristine, 2-story colonial with white siding and black shutters, sitting on a lawn that was manicured to within an inch of its life. It looked like the kind of house where people baked apple pies and played catch in the yard. It looked like the American dream. But I knew better. I knew that the white siding hid dry rot, and the manicured lawn was poisoned with chemicals to keep the dandelions away. It was a house of appearances, and today, I was going to strip the paint off. I walked up the driveway, clutching my purse against my side. Inside that bag was my phone, fully charged, and the voice recorder, already running. I could feel the device humming against my hip, a secret second heartbeat. I rang the doorbell. I did not use my key. Guests ring the doorbell. And today, I was not family. I was the opposition. The door swung open instantly, as if they had been standing right behind it, waiting. "Daisy?" It was my mother. Linda Hale was wearing a floral apron over a cashmere sweater, her hair perfectly coiffed, her face a mask of tragic hope. Before I could say a word, she lunged at me. She wrapped her arms around me in a crushing embrace, pulling me into the foyer. She smelled of expensive perfume and roast beef. "Oh, my poor baby," she cried out, her voice pitched loud enough for the back row of a theater to hear. "You are safe. You are home." She squeezed me so hard it felt like a warning. "Play along," the hug said. "Don't you dare make a scene." I stood stiffly in her arms, not hugging back. I let my arms hang at my sides like dead weights. When she finally pulled away, she kept her hands on my shoulders, looking me up and down with exaggerated sorrow. "Look at you," she murmured, turning me toward the living room. "You look so thin, so tired, but do not worry. We are going to take care of everything." She shepherded me into the living room. It was a full house. My Aunt Sarah was there, sitting on the velvet sofa with a glass of iced tea. My Uncle Bob was in the recliner. Two of my cousins, Mike and Jenna, were perched on ottomans. Even my great-aunt Martha was there, dozing in the corner. It was a perfect audience. "She is here," Linda announced, presenting me like an exhibit. "Daisy is home." The room erupted in a chorus of sympathetic noises. "Oh, honey," Aunt Sarah said, standing up to peck my cheek. "We have been praying for you. Your mom told us everything." "Everything?" I asked, my voice calm. "What did she tell you?" "About the accident," Sarah whispered, glancing nervously at Linda. "And how confused you have been. It is okay. Daisy, trauma affects everyone differently." I looked at Linda. She was beaming at me, a benevolent dictator presiding over her court. Gordon was standing by the fireplace, swirling a glass of scotch. He nodded at me, his eyes cold and guarded. "Sit down, Daisy," Gordon said. "Relax. You are among family." I sat on the edge of a hard-backed chair, keeping my distance from the comfortable circle. I placed my purse on my lap, my hand resting protectively over the clasp. "We wanted to have this dinner," Linda said, taking center stage in the middle of the rug, "because we know how hard this week has been for you, losing your home. It is unimaginable, and we know that when people are in shock, they say things they do not mean. They lash out at the people who love them most." She looked at me with a sad, forgiving smile. "I know you were upset when you called us the other night," she continued. "And I know you have been listening to that fire investigator, but you have to understand, Daisy, those people, insurance adjusters, investigators, they are not on your side. They want to deny your claim. They want to blame you. They will put ideas in your head to make you doubt your own family." The room nodded in agreement. "That is right," Uncle Bob chimed in. "Insurance companies are crooks. You have to be careful. Daisy, listen to your mother. She used to work in billing. She knows how these things go." "Exactly," Linda said. "So, Gordon and I have decided we are going to help you manage the claim. We will talk to the adjusters. We will handle the paperwork. You just need to focus on healing. You need to rest your mind." She extended a hand. "Did you bring the papers? Sweetie? The policy documents? The lease?" It was a masterclass in manipulation. She was framing her attempt to control the investigation as an act of maternal charity. If I refused, I would look ungrateful. If I handed them over, I would be handing her the matches to burn the evidence. I looked around the room. I saw the pity in my cousin's eyes. They thought I was broken. They thought I was a child who needed managing. "I did not bring the papers," I said softly. The room went quiet. Linda's smile faltered for a fraction of a second before recovering. "Oh," she said. "Did you forget them?" "That is okay. We can go to your temporary place tomorrow and—" "I did not forget them," I interrupted. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the room like a razor. I gave them to my lawyer. Your lawyer? Gordon stepped forward, his brow furrowing. Why would you need a lawyer, Daisy? We are handling this. Because there are discrepancies, I said, and my lawyer thinks they are criminal. Linda laughed. It was a high, brittle sound. Criminal? Oh, Daisy, stop it. See? She turned to Aunt Sarah. This is what I was talking about. She is paranoid. She thinks there is some big conspiracy. It is not paranoia if it is on video, I said. I looked directly at my mother. I locked eyes with her. I let the silence stretch out, letting the tension build until it filled the room like smoke. Mom, I said, you told the investigator you were at my apartment for 30 minutes on Tuesday. Linda blinked. She looked confused by the pivot. Yes, I stopped by to check on you. I was there for half an hour. Why? Because, I said, keeping my voice conversational. The electronic lock on my door logs every entry and exit, and the log says you were inside for 2 hours and 27 minutes. The silence that followed was different. It was not the silence of pity. It was the silence of confusion. What? Aunt Sarah asked, looking between us. 2 hours? That is ridiculous, Linda scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. The machine is broken, or you are reading it wrong. I was there for 30 minutes. Ask anyone. I had errands to run. The lock is not broken, I said, and neither are the hallway cameras. I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes then. Just a spark. She knew I had told her the cameras were fake. She was wondering if I had lied. You are confused, Daisy, Gordon barked, stepping into the center of the room. You are traumatized. You do not know what you are talking about. You are embarrassing yourself in front of the family. I am not talking to you, Gordon, I said, not breaking eye contact with my mother. I am talking to Mom. Do not speak to him like that, Linda snapped, her mask slipping. The concerned mother was replaced by the sharp-edged woman I knew. We are trying to help you. Why are you doing this? I am just asking a question, I said. If you were there for 2 hours, Mom, what were you doing while I was asleep? I was cleaning, she shouted, her face flushing pink. I was tidying up your pigsty of an apartment because you never clean. I was helping you. Cleaning, I repeated. Okay, I reached into my bag. I did not pull out papers. I pulled out my phone. Then explain the cooler, I said. Linda froze. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. Her eyes darted to the left, looking for an exit, looking for an answer. The what? She asked weakly. The cooler, I said. The red and white cooler you carried into my apartment, the one you held in your left hand. I did not bring a cooler, she stammered. I brought a purse, a tote bag. You are imagining things. See? She is hallucinating objects now. She turned to the family, desperate for validation. She is making things up. I never took a cooler there. Why would I take a cooler to visit my daughter? Exactly, I said. Why would you? Gordon moved toward me. He looked menacing now. The Scotch glass in his hand was gripping tight. That is enough, he growled. Give me the phone. Daisy, you are sick. We are taking you to the hospital. He reached for me. Do not touch me, I said. I stood up. I was not the little girl anymore. I was a woman who had walked through fire. And do not call me sick. I tapped the screen of my phone. I knew you would lie, I said. I knew you would say I was crazy. That is why I did not come alone. You came alone, Linda spat. I saw you get dropped off. I brought the truth, I said. I swiped up on my phone screen. I hit the screen mirroring button. I selected living room TV. I had connected to their Wi-Fi 1,000 times over the years. My phone remembered the password. The giant 60-inch television above the fireplace flickered. The image of the looping family photo slideshow disappeared. In its place, a grainy black and white video appeared. It was the hallway footage. What is this? Uncle Bob asked, squinting at the screen. Tuesday, I said. 1:45 in the afternoon. On the screen, Linda walked into the frame. It was unmistakable. The coat, the sunglasses, and in her left hand, clear as day against the white wall of the hallway, was the cooler. The room gasped. It was a collective intake of breath that sucked the air out of the space. Is that a cooler?" Aunt Sarah asked, pointing a trembling finger at the TV. "Yes," I said. "It is." On the screen. Linda entered the apartment. I tapped the phone again. The video jumped forward. 2 hours and 27 minutes later, I narrated. Linda walked out. She was holding the tote bag. Her left hand was empty. "Where is it?" I asked, my voice ringing in the silence. "Where is the cooler? Mom?" Linda was staring at the TV. Her face had gone the color of old paper. She looked like she had seen a ghost. She stuttered. I left it there. It had soup. I brought you soup." "Soup?" I asked. "You brought me soup in a cooler, and you left the cooler?" But when the fire investigator went through the debris, they did not find a melted cooler in the kitchen. They found traces of it in the bedroom, melted into the floorboards where the fire started. "That is a lie," Gordon shouted. He lunged for the remote control on the coffee table, trying to turn off the TV. "Turn it off!" Linda screamed. "Stop it! She doctored it! It is a deep fake!" "It is from the building security system," I said, raising my voice over their panic. "And the police have the original." I turned to the family. They were not looking at me with pity anymore. They were looking at Linda and Gordon with a dawning, horrific realization. They saw the panic. They saw the sweat on Gordon's forehead. They saw the terror in Linda's eyes. "Why was the cooler in the bedroom, Mom?" I pressed, stepping closer to her. "And why does the hardware store video show you buying pyro gel and a timer with cash on Monday?" "Shut up!" Linda shrieked. It was a primal scream, stripped of all pretense. "You ungrateful little brat! After everything I did for you." "Everything you did for me?" I asked. "Like forging my signature on my insurance policy? Like changing the beneficiary to you and Gordon so you would get the $50,000 when my life burned down?" "What?" Uncle Bob stood up. "Linda, is that true?" "No," Linda yelled. "She is lying. She is crazy." "I saw the video," Aunt Sarah said quietly. She stood up, her hand shaking. "I saw the cooler. Linda, you just said you did not bring one. You lied." "Sarah, please," Linda pleaded, reaching out. "You know me. I am your sister." "I do not know what you are," Sarah said, backing away. "You burned her apartment? You could have killed her." "I did not know she was going to be there," Linda blurted out. The room froze. Absolute, 0-degree stillness. Linda clapped her hands over her mouth instantly, her eyes widening in horror. She had not meant to say it. The pressure, the video, the accusation, it had squeezed the truth out of her like juice from a rotten fruit. "You did not know I was going to be there," I repeated slowly. "So you admit you set the fire. You just thought I would be out." "No," Linda whispered through her fingers. "No, I did not mean." "You monster," I said. I felt tears running down my face, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of relief. "You were willing to burn everything I owned for money, and you did not even care if I was inside." Gordon grabbed Linda's arm. "We are leaving," he hissed. "Do not say another word." "You are not going anywhere," I said. I looked at the window, outside. Blue and red lights were flashing against the living room curtains. They had been there for the last 2 minutes, waiting for my signal. I had texted Caleb when I started casting the video. The front door burst open. Caleb Stroud walked in, followed by 2 uniformed police officers. "Linda Hale, Gordon Hale," Caleb said, his voice filling the room like a gavel strike. "I have a warrant for your arrest." Linda collapsed onto the sofa, sobbing, but it was not the pretty theatrical crying she had done earlier. It was the ugly, heaving sobbing of a woman who realizes the curtain has fallen and there is no applause. The family stared in shock. My Aunt Sarah was crying. My cousins looked sick. I stood in the center of the chaos, clutching my phone. I looked at the TV screen, where the frozen image of my mother leaving my apartment remained. The show was over. The audience had seen the truth, and the actors were about to be led away in handcuffs. The chaos that erupted in my mother's living room was not the cinematic, slow-motion drama I had expected. It was sharp, loud, and ugly. Just seconds before the front door had burst open, Gordon had tried to salvage the sinking ship of their reputation. He had stepped in front of the television, blocking the image of Linda fleeing my apartment, and raised his hands like a preacher trying to calm a riot. "Everyone, please," Gordon had shouted, his face slick with sweat. "Daisy is unwell. She has doctored these videos. We need to call a doctor, not listen to—" That was when the doorbell didn't just ring. It was hammered, and before Gordon could finish his sentence about my instability, Caleb Stroud walked in, flanked by 2 uniformed officers, the warrant in his hand looking like a stone tablet of judgment. The room did not just go silent. It seemed to shrink. The air was sucked out of the space, replaced by the heavy metallic presence of the law. "Gordon Hale, Linda Hale," Caleb repeated, his voice cutting through the tension. "I am executing a search warrant for this premise in relation to an active arson and fraud investigation." "You cannot be here," Gordon sputtered, his voice cracking. He looked small suddenly, stripped of his arrogance. "This is a private residence. We are having a family dinner." "We know," Caleb said calmly. "And now, the dinner is over." Linda, who had been frozen on the sofa, suddenly surged to her feet, the poor mother mask, which had slipped when she admitted she didn't know I was home, now shattered completely. "She trapped me," Linda screamed, pointing a manicured finger at me. Her face was twisted into a snarl I had only ever seen in private, never in front of an audience. "You little snake! You set this up! You invited yourself over here to humiliate me!" Her voice broke, cracking into a screech that made Aunt Sarah flinch physically. There was no sadness in it. There was no maternal concern. There was only the raw, terrified rage of a narcissist who had lost control of the narrative. "I did not set the fire, Mom," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "I just turned on the lights." Caleb stepped forward, placing himself between me and my parents. He looked at the stunned family members sitting on the couches. "Folks, I am going to have to ask you to remain seated but stay out of the way," Caleb announced. He turned his attention back to Linda and Gordon. "We have probable cause. We have the electronic access logs from the victim's apartment showing a 2-hour unauthorized entry. We have video surveillance from the hardware store of the purchase of accelerants. We have sworn testimony regarding the forgery of insurance documents." "Forgery?" Uncle Bob whispered, looking at his sister. "Linda?" "It is a lie," Linda yelled, but she was backing away, retreating toward the kitchen. "It is all a lie. She signed those papers. She wanted the money." "We also have the chemical analysis," Caleb continued, relentless. "Traces of a specific industrial gel were found at the origin point of the fire, a gel that requires a specific solvent to clean up, a solvent that leaves a smell." He looked at Gordon. "And we have the log of the master key used to enter the apartment at 1 a.m, key M47, the key assigned to Apex Maintenance." Gordon's face went gray. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. "Officer," Caleb nodded to the policeman on his left. "Please separate Mr. Hale. We need to ask him about his relationship with the maintenance supervisor at Apex. We have already pulled his phone records. We know about the calls." "Gordon." The officer moved in. Gordon didn't fight. He looked like a balloon that had been pricked. He let the officer guide him toward the dining room, away from Linda. "No!" Linda shrieked. "Do not say anything. Gordon, do not talk to them." "Mrs. Hale, please sit down," the second officer said, stepping toward her. "I will not sit down in my own house," Linda spat. "Then stand," Caleb said. But we are searching this house. Now, he turned to me. Daisy, stay here. The garage, I whispered to him. Check the garage. The cabinet on the far left. That is where he keeps his restoration supplies. Caleb nodded. He signaled to another team that was waiting just outside the front door. 3 more officers entered, pulling on blue latex gloves. The sound of the latex snapping against their wrists was the only sound in the room. I stood by the fireplace, watching. My family was paralyzed. Aunt Sarah was clutching a throw pillow to her chest, tears streaming down her face. My cousin Jenna looked like she was about to be sick. They were watching the police dismantle the sanctuary of their matriarch. The search was fast, violent in its efficiency. They did not care about the neatly folded towels or the arranged porcelain figurines. 10 minutes passed. The only sounds were the heavy boots of the officers on the hardwood floors and the low, muffled sobbing of Linda, who had finally collapsed back onto the sofa, her face buried in her hands. Then, Caleb came back in from the garage. He was holding an evidence bag. Inside the clear plastic, visible to everyone in the room, was a silver can. The label was partially torn, but the red and black lettering was distinct. Pyro gel, industrial strength. Found it, Caleb said, his voice devoid of triumph, just heavy with fact. Hidden inside a toolbox in the back of the cabinet. It is open, about half of it is missing. He held up a second bag. Inside was a pair of heavy rubber gloves, stained with dark, gummy residue. And these, Caleb said, smells like almonds. We will get the lab to confirm, but I would bet my pension that the residue on these gloves matches the burn pattern in Daisy's bedroom. Gordon, who was being watched in the dining room, let out a low moan. But Caleb was not done. He signaled to another officer who came down the stairs carrying a cardboard box. We found this in the master bedroom closet, the officer said. Top shelf, behind the winter coats. Caleb opened the box on the coffee table. Right in front of Linda, he pulled out a stack of papers. Blank life insurance applications. Caleb read, flipping through them. Coverage amount, $100,000. He pulled out another sheet. And a photocopy of Daisy Martin's driver's license, a photocopy of her birth certificate, and, this is interesting, he held up a sheet of notebook paper. It was a handwritten list. It looked like a to-do list, but the items were chilling. 1. Update policy, done. 2. Wait 30 days. 3. Verify hospital coverage. 4. Executor status. The room felt cold, freezing. They were not done, I whispered, staring at the list. The fire, the renter's insurance, that was just the start. They were taking out life insurance on me. They were building a portfolio on you, Caleb said grimly. They had copies of your signature practiced on this notepad here. They were preparing to insure you. And then... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The implication hung in the air like smoke. If I had died in that fire, they would have collected the renter's insurance. But these papers suggested they had a longer game, a darker game. Gordon! Linda screamed suddenly, her head snapping up. Tell them it was for her own good. Tell them we were just organizing her files. Gordon, standing in the archway of the dining room, looked at the evidence on the table. He looked at the can of pyrogel. He looked at the handwritten list, and he broke. I told you it was too much, Gordon stammered, his voice shaking. I told you we should just ask for a loan. I did not want to burn it. You said it would be easy. You said she would not be there. Shut up, Linda roared. She lunged off the couch, her face contorted into a mask of pure hatred. Shut your mouth, you idiot! You weak, pathetic coward! Shut up! The officer had to physically restrain her. She was thrashing, screaming, trying to get to Gordon to silence him. He made me do it! Gordon cried out, pointing at her with a trembling hand. She planned it all. She bought the stuff. I just opened the door. I just poured it where she told me. You are a liar, Linda shrieked. He is lying. He is trying to frame me. It was over. The confession hung there, ugly and undeniable. They were turning on each other. The united front of the concerned parents had dissolved into a rat fight. Aunt Sarah let out a sound that was half sob, half wail. "Oh my God," she cried, covering her mouth. "Linda, how could you? She is your daughter." Linda stopped struggling. She looked at her sister. For a second, I thought she might apologize. I thought she might show a flicker of humanity. "She is an investment that never paid off," Linda hissed. 30 years I fed her, clothed her, and what did I get? Nothing. She owes me. The silence that followed was absolute. I looked at the woman who had given birth to me. I looked at the hatred in her eyes. It was not madness. It was not a psychotic break. It was just pure, unadulterated selfishness. She did not see me as a person. She saw me as a sunk cost, and she had tried to liquidate me to recoup her losses. "You have the right to remain silent," Caleb said, his voice cutting through the horror. "I suggest you start using it." The officers pulled Linda's hands behind her back. The click of the handcuffs was sharp and final. It was the loudest sound I had ever heard. They cuffed Gordon next. He was weeping now. Soft, pathetic sobs that made him look even smaller. As they were led out the front door, past the neighbors who had gathered on the sidewalk, past the family members who were still sitting in stunned silence, Linda looked back at me one last time. She did not look sorry. She looked furious that she had lost. The door closed. The police were gone. The sirens wailed as they pulled away. I stood in the center of the living room. The TV was still on, showing the frozen image of the empty hallway. "Daisy," a voice said. I turned. It was my cousin Jenna. She was standing up, her face wet with tears. We believed her," Jenna whispered. "She told us you were off your meds. She told us you were hallucinating. We thought we were helping you by telling you to listen to her." "I know," I said. "I am so sorry," Jenna sobbed. "I should have asked. I should have called you instead of listening to her. I am so sorry. Daisy." She reached out to hug me, but I stepped back. I wasn't ready for hugs. I wasn't ready for forgiveness. "It is okay," I said, though it wasn't. "You were just part of the script." Caleb walked back in. He had stayed behind to secure the evidence. He walked over to the coffee table and began bagging the insurance papers. "You okay?" he asked, keeping his voice low. "I do not know," I said honestly. "I feel light." "That is the adrenaline wearing off," Caleb said. "Or maybe it is the weight of the lie being lifted." He looked at the family. "Someone needs to drive Daisy home," Caleb announced to the room. "She has had a long day." "I will," Uncle Bob said. Standing up, he looked aged, like he had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. "I will take her. And, Daisy, whatever you need, a place to stay, money, lawyers, the family, we will fix this." I looked at him. I looked at this room full of people who had watched me drown for a week and done nothing but tell me to stop splashing. "I do not need your money. Uncle Bob," I said, "I have my insurance, and I have the truth." I walked over to the coffee table and picked up my purse. I turned off the voice recorder. I didn't need it anymore. The confession was public. The evidence was seized. I walked to the door. I paused and looked back at the perfect, pristine living room. It felt different now. It didn't feel like a stage anymore. It just felt like a house with empty spaces where the monsters used to be. I walked out into the cool afternoon air. Mila was waiting by her car, holding a tire iron, looking ready to charge the front door. When she saw me, she dropped the iron and ran to me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream in triumph. I just stood there, breathing in the air that didn't smell like smoke. The truth hadn't needed a megaphone. It hadn't needed a fight. It just needed to be brought into the room, and the lies had withered in its presence. My parents were in the back of a police car. My apartment was a pile of ash. My job was in limbo, but as I looked up at the sky, I realized something. I was free. "Did we get them?" Mila asked, scanning my face. Yeah, I said, opening the car door. We got them. What happened? They turned on each other, I said, just like the investigator said they would. They were so busy trying to save themselves, they forgot to save the lie. I got into the car. I watched the police tape being strung across the front door of my childhood home. It was over. The fire was out. Now, all that was left was to sweep up the ashes. The sound of the handcuffs ratcheting tight was not loud. But in the silence of my mother's living room, it sounded like a gunshot. It was a mechanical, final click that severed the last thread of the performance she had been staging for 30 years. Linda Hale, the woman who had just tried to convince an entire room of relatives that I was mentally unstable, was now standing with her hands bound behind her back. Her face pressed against the floral wallpaper she was so proud of. The police officer reading her rights did so in a monotone voice, a stark contrast to the operatic screaming match that had just taken place. I watched her. I looked for a shred of the mother I had wanted her to be, but all I saw was a stranger in a cashmere sweater who had gambled my life for a payout. Caleb Stroud stood by the fireplace, the anchor in the storm. He waited until the officers had Linda and Gordon securely in custody before he addressed the room. He was not speaking to my parents anymore. He was speaking to the witnesses. He was speaking to the family members who had been complicit in my isolation. "There is one last thing you should all know," Caleb said, his voice carrying effortlessly across the room. "Just so there is no doubt in anyone's mind about who the victim is here." He pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket. "We subpoenaed the phone records for the insurance company's claims department. We found a call made to their automated system. The caller asked about the timeline for a total loss payout. They wanted to know if the check would be cut in 30 days or 60 days. He paused, letting the words sink in. That call was made on Monday morning, 24 hours before the fire started. 24 hours before Daisy even knew she was in danger. My Aunt Sarah let out a strangled sob. Burying her face in her hands, the timeline was the final nail. You do not ask when the insurance check is coming unless you know the house is going to burn. It proved it was not an impulse. It was not a mistake. It was a calculation. Nina Halpern, my lawyer, arrived at the house just as the police were escorting my parents out the door. She walked up the driveway with the stride of a general arriving to inspect a conquered battlefield. She did not look at the neighbors gawking from their lawns. She walked straight to me. "I have the preliminary handwriting analysis," she said, raising her voice enough so that Gordon, who was being shoved into the back of a squad car, could hear her. "The forensic document examiner confirmed it. The signature on the beneficiary change form is a simulated forgery, and with the video from the notary and the sworn statement from the clerk who remembers a woman complaining about her busy daughter, we have them on identity theft, insurance fraud, and forgery." Gordon stopped moving. He looked at Nina, then he looked at me. The reality of the prison sentence facing him seemed to crash down on his shoulders. He was a weak man. I had always known that. He followed Linda because she was the strong one, the loud one. But now, facing the prospect of dying in a cell, his loyalty evaporated. "It was her debt!" Gordon shouted suddenly, twisting his body to look back at the police officers. "I want to make a deal. I will tell you everything. It was her gambling debt." Linda, who was being placed in the other car, began to scream at him to shut up, but Gordon was babbling now, desperate to offload the blame. "She owes $60,000 to a loan shark," Gordon yelled, his voice cracking. "She needed the insurance money to pay them off before they came for the house. She made me get the key. She told me it was the only way." I stood on the porch, feeling the cold wind on my face. Gambling debt. That was the reason. My life, my safety, my home. It had all been weighed against a $60,000 debt, and I had come up short. I was not a daughter to them. I was a liquidation asset. The police cars drove away, lights flashing, taking the monsters with them. The aftermath was a blur of legal motions and quiet victories. With Gordon turning state's witness against Linda to reduce his own sentence, the case moved faster than anyone expected. He provided the receipts for the chemicals, which he had saved in a misguided attempt to have leverage over Linda. He admitted to using the master key that he had obtained through a bribe to an old drinking buddy at the maintenance company. He detailed the entire plan, from the beneficiary change to the chemical mixture in the cooler. His testimony did not save him, but it buried Linda, with the fraud exposed. The insurance company moved quickly to correct the record. The fraudulent beneficiary form was voided. My original policy was reinstated. 3 weeks after the arrest, I sat in Nina's office. She slid a check across the mahogany desk. It was for the full amount of my personal property coverage, plus an additional sum for temporary living expenses. "We deducted the legal fees," Nina said, her voice professional but her eyes warm. "And we are filing a separate civil suit against your parents' assets for emotional distress and punitive damages. We will likely be able to seize the equity in their house. You will get everything. Daisy, every dime they tried to take from you, and then some." I looked at the check. It was just paper. It could not replace the photos of my grandmother or the journals I had kept since high school. Those were gone forever. But this check represented something else. It represented the first time in my life that I had fought back and won. "Thank you, Nina," I said, "for believing me when I sounded crazy." "You never sounded crazy," Nina said. "You sounded like a woman who knew she was being hunted." The next battle was at work. I walked into the Northbridge Compliance Group building on a Tuesday morning. I was not wearing my old, oversized cardigans. I was wearing a new, sharp navy blazer I had bought with my insurance advance. I carried a leather portfolio. Inside was a copy of the official police report and the indictment charges against Linda and Gordon Hale. I walked straight to Human Resources. "Ms. Prentice looked up from her desk, her expression guarded. "Daisy," she said, "I did not expect you back until we received the psychiatric clearance." I placed the portfolio on her desk. "There will be no psychiatric clearance," I said calmly, "because there is no psychiatric issue. The anonymous calls you received about my mental health were part of a coordinated campaign of harassment and witness intimidation orchestrated by the primary suspects in a felony arson investigation." I opened the file and pointed to the paragraph where the police detailed the smear campaign. "My mother and stepfather have been indicted," I said. "They used my employment to try to discredit me as a witness. The Baxter Project reference? That was not a work crisis. That was a childhood story my mother used to manipulate your perception of me." Ms. Prentice read the report. Her face went pale. She realized that the company had been used as a pawn in a crime. She realized that they had almost fired a victim of domestic terrorism because of a phone call. "Daisy," she stammered, we had no idea. The caller sounded so credible." "That is how con artists work," I said. "I expect my administrative leave to be expunged from my record. I expect a formal apology, and I expect to be back at my desk within the hour." By noon, I was reinstated. The rumor mill at the office went wild. But this time, the whispers were not about Crazy Daisy. They were about the woman who had taken down her own parents in a sting operation. I held my head high. I had my honor back. The hardest part was the family. Aunt Sarah and the cousins tried to reach out. They sent texts. They left voicemails. "We are so sorry. We didn't know. We love you." I did not reply. I went to court and filed for a permanent restraining order against Linda and Gordon Hale. But I went a step further. I had Nina draft a cease and desist letter to every single relative who had participated in the gaslighting. I told them that any communication from them would be considered harassment. I cut them off, all of them. It was surgical. It was painful, but it was necessary. You cannot heal from poison if you keep taking small doses of it just to be polite. 2 months later, I moved into a new apartment. It was on the other side of the city, in a building with a brick facade and a heavy iron gate. It was smaller than my old place, but it had big windows that let in the morning light. I stood in the empty living room. The first thing I had done was hire a locksmith. I did not use the landlord's guy. I hired my own. A woman Nina recommended. I watched her install a high-security deadbolt. I watched her hand me the only 2 keys in existence. Do you want to give a spare to anyone? She asked. I looked at the keys. They were cold and heavy in my palm. No, I said. Just me. I spent that first night unpacking. I bought new furniture. None of it looked like the stuff I had lost. I bought a blue velvet sofa instead of beige. I bought abstract art instead of floral prints. I was building a life that Linda Hale would hate, and that made me love it. I sat on my new balcony, drinking a cup of tea, watching the city lights flicker below. I thought about the fire. For weeks, I had been terrified of fire. The smell of a match striking would make me panic. But as I sat there, I realized that the fire had done something else. It had burned away the clutter. Not just the furniture and the clothes. It had burned away the obligation I felt to be a good daughter. It had burned away the guilt I carried for not being enough for them. It had burned away the illusion that shared DNA meant shared love. My parents had tried to destroy me. They had tried to turn me into ash so they could sweep me into a dustpan and trade me for cash. But they forgot one thing about fire. Fire hardens steel. I was not the same Daisy who had run down the stairs that night, crying for her mother. That Daisy was gone. The woman sitting on this balcony was forged in the heat of their betrayal. I took a sip of tea. It was quiet. No phone ringing with accusations. No passive-aggressive texts. No fear of who was walking through my door while I slept. I was alone, and for the first time in my entire life, I was safe. The fire had taken my past. Yes, but it had given me my future. And this time, I was the one holding the matches. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please leave a comment below sharing your location and your thoughts on my parents' betrayal. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel Monica Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach more people.